Loco, I have no idea what people were saying about clean your room, by the way, but your room is a fucking mess.
You know what's hilarious? I'm not even joking. I'm just going to say this now. It's not even a problem. But Loco really is one of those people who's like, the Jordan Peterson guy. What, the guy who says to clean your room? Everyone knows that.
What?
It's like, you don't know anything, mate. You don't know anything.
Wait, what? Wait, where is this going?
Because here's the thing. Do you know what the real premise, before we just start, do you know what the real premise of why like that famous catchphrase of Jordan Peterson is clean your room? Yeah. Do you know what the concept is?
What is it? Anything that takes 5 minutes or less to do, you just get it out of the way?
Oh, I don't know if that's the thing people say. No, the premise basically is, the idea is, if you won't even look at your living area and say, right, well, I've got to get this in order, you won't look at your life and do that. You won't look at your job and do that. You'll just leave it all a fucking mess. You'll do things wherever you want. You'll throw things here and there. You'll come and you go. Like, it's a premise that if that can't be the foundational block, like, how are you ever going to have self-discipline over your life? So all I'm saying is, you're not the best advert for the idea that someone could have a very messy room and then have a very disciplined life with loads of like hard work, discipline stuff. So all I'm saying is, I don't say you need Jordan Peterson. You all need something though. Might not be Jesus.
My bathroom's clean.
Clean your room.
I think you need to get into a cult or something. Local. Yeah, there we go. Stop talking shit about them journalists, boy. Right, anyway, so I think we're good to go now.
Whatever.
Right. This is going to be episode 96. I think I was right, yeah? 96, Listen Loco. Our guest for this episode is Spawn, who comes from the Oceanic region. If people actually remember far enough back, you actually used to do LPL as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when the LPL first came over to Sydney, I was actually the project manager and one of the shoutcasters on it as well. So was lucky enough to bring people like Frost and Raz back onto the show after the LPL and EN days. So it was really good.
Okay. And now, listen, I'll say this at the top of the show, because I like to keep things nice and transparent. For the first, hour of the show, we're going to talk about Spawn's domestic region, the OPL, Oceanic region, where he's also a caster, in the past at least, and he's now ownership, etc. And the key thing is, yes, we're going to discuss all that. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know that region. So I'm going to be learning a lot of stuff or forgetting a lot of stuff that I pretend to learn in the moment. But after that, we're going to then talk about some of the LCS transfer moves. So if you want one or the other, choose which you do at that point in time, if this is a VOD or whatever. And also, he doesn't claim to be an expert about the LCS, but he's just going to join in on that. We'll see where we go. We'll have some fun with that, okay? So I'll just say this.
Why not?
This is a rare example where I'm going to make a case that might sound hypocritical, right? Because everyone... this is how ridiculous the world is, Spawn. I'm just going to get you on my side immediately, mate. When I did an episode that was about fucking the LCK, Loco's fucking home region, where literally all his friends live and give him all his information, he didn't bother watching any of the VODs, and his excuse was that I didn't tell him what VODs and what storylines to watch, even though he knew there was an episode coming up that was about Korea. So the obvious reason why that excuse will never fly is, even if someone didn't tell you the VODs, just watch a couple of the big games, watch the big teams, just get the basic info. So even though Loco tried to spin that I was the one doing a bad thing, and all idiots in his chat and Reddit all agreed with him, because again, that's the level we're dealing with here, right? I will tell you right now that I haven't watched VODs in the Oceanic region. I didn't watch them to prep for this show. And the reason why actually is because the LCK one is different, because LCK is incredibly relevant to the global scene. And literally, to even talk about Worlds, for example, you'd need to have some bearing on it. You need to research that at some point in time if you want to be a global analyst, or I would say a big figure in League of Legends. I definitely don't claim to know anything about the Oceanic region. It will very rarely impinge upon my career. And actually, I'll even say, even the players coming into the West now, Destiny and LEC, Rioma over in NA, obviously in the past we had some players lost, etc. Even those players, I'm going to get to know as they're in those leagues. And I'll hopefully at the beginning not prejudge them when I'm not knowing anything. So I actually genuinely, it's like this is something I sometimes do on the desk in CSGO. If we have a very tiny team, it's often actually from Oceania, like Asia, that qualifies to CS, it's such a small region. If a tiny team qualifies that I don't know, I often tell people, mate, if I had 2 hours extra, I'd just research more about some of the top teams so I could go more in depth there. Like, if this team's probably going to lose all its games, it's at the beginning of the tournament, I want to experience it with the viewers. Like, if there's a player who becomes really good, I think it's pretty cool if I can authentically be like, whoa, that guy's actually pretty fucking good. Like, did you see those strats? Like, I didn't even know they could play the map. Like, in a weird sense, I think actually, like, it makes sense to me, at least, my criteria there. So I'm totally open. It's a learning episode now, I feel like.
Yeah, and I feel like I agree with you because, I've been in a similar situation, and I feel like even the research you can do is not relevant because it's against domestic opponents a lot of the time. So even if they like to play fast or they like to play through mid lane or whatever the case may be, when you get on the international stage and you're playing against a Faker or a Jensen or something like that, all that goes out the window anyway. So I think that that's probably the most authentic way to actually approach viewing a lot of these players and all of their teams, because it's not going to be relevant trying to take examples from the home region necessarily and bring it into an international stage. I just don't think that works with a region like ours.
Oh, and by the way, I'll even add as well, just for context for people who are actually like true fans of the show and not just trying to ride against people, when we have other episodes, a great example would be when we had Jensen Gore. I know when I used to do my Narrative Wake show, I had like a bunch of other, Jonathan Yee, I had a bunch of people basically who come from these like Asian countries, but it's not like, they're not Chinese, they're not Korean, etc. They come from the smaller countries, and people would always hard flame these guys, because like all analysts, like one of our mechanisms for talking shit is, yes, we just take plebs, like random fans, and we argue against the annoying opinions they give. And part of the reason we do it is because we want to sort of set the record straight. We want to say, no, like it's this way. Well, one of the problems those guys always run into is basically what you're saying now, is because they do know their region in depth. When they hear someone act as though like, what? Vietnam, like they'll never win a single game. What, Singapore, no chance. Like what they do, unfortunately, is they go too far the other way, but in the way Spawn's saying here, like they'll just, because they know like who the best player is, and for example, they might know a really weird case, like maybe what was the VCS team that was most GAM? If GAM Esports goes, they might actually know that stylistically GAM should have a chance to win. By the way, notice they're falling into the same trap as the LS Janair Green Wings would beat the G2 thing then. So what happens is, unfortunately, they do overvalue like something amazing that team did domestically or a style that worked, and then they don't realise the sad reality, which is when you go to a national player, you go to bigger regions, etc. The problem is if someone is just fundamentally better than you, you can actually play the right way and they can still win. Like that's just unfortunately video games, guys. There's a reason why it's not just a pure skill game. It's actually like a mixture of skill and strategy, and there's all elements going on. So let me start out by asking this. Realistically, if we look at the big regions, right, I feel like at the moment it's like this. Okay, so I would actually personally say, yes, I would overall put China and EU at the top, but even then I feel like that's very precarious because, for example, I feel like G2 could beat everyone else in China, and I don't know if all the other Chinese teams would beat, I don't know, right? That one's tough, right? Then I would say, personally, I think Korea's only just below. Like, I think their problem is they just didn't have like a clear number one, but the quality in general in the region, pretty good. Yep. NA at the moment was basically just, unfortunately, being boosted a bit by Team Liquid. So they're like a decent gap below. But this is my question. I know everyone now writes the LMS off completely, for example, even though J-Team, etc., actually shocked us at Worlds. And obviously, no one really gives a fuck, as I said, about VCS and stuff if they're from the other regions. But if NA is like in that spot as the fourth, and they're just below, like, there's a gap, but it's not crazy. Like Team Liquid was obviously very good. Like relative to NA, where are places like Oceanic region?
Yeah, well, I guess like you have to look at kind of, and this is where it becomes very hard to eyeball, but I guess the last Rift rivals we had, we took out Southeast Asia as well as Japan pretty cleanly, right? And that's top 3 team versus top 3 team. So you can make an argument that as far as Southeast Asia and Japan goes, Oceania is at least up there in skill level, if not above. Historically, we've done really well against Brazil, and we've done really poorly versus Turkey. So there's kind of this 3-way triangle going on there. So I think like that's where I would kind of put us, is in like the Brazil-Turkey. I think the CIS or Russia or whatever you want to call it has done like a much better job recently. They're kind of up there with the VCS with me as kind of the next tier. And I put LMS and North America on the same tier, to be completely frank, like with everyone at home. So that's kind of, that will give an insight into how I'm going to go into the LCS later, because I actually think that, domestic... being close to the Korean and Chinese server, being able to have crossover between languages and coaching staff, being able to, try out with a lot of the LPL teams from my time in the LPL. I know that's how the crossover with the LMS certainly does work. There's a reason they slide onto these teams so easily, right? So I think that, maybe not the same depth. The depth of the LMS right now is shocking. They've been pillaged. So like, that's what I will say. But the best team in the LMS at the moment, I think, can rival the second or third best team within NA. I think Team Liquid really is an anomaly. They have 4 imports. Yeah. They have the best domestic player of all time. That team in my head is not an NA LCS team anymore. That is just like an LCS team that's been plonked in the middle of the league.
See, that's not that crazy. I know initially it sounded crazy, Loco, because he just said like he actually did it the right way. He said the like provocative statement, and then he just actually explained and clarified why.
Because I just want the clip, right?
Yeah. No, it's also how you just do it, mate. If you want to do talk shows, well, that is the way you do it. Like I even once told Loco like the secret to how to tweet like that. We'll see if he remembers it. I doubt he does, but I basically gave him the secret. You can imagine how it is. I just unlocked.
Make a shocking like point, and then what is it? Explain your shocking point in a reasonable manner.
Yeah, but the point is you make it separate. You make the point separately so that anyone who just wants to go crazy on that goes crazy on that. But then the idea is the people who are reasonable will read the follow-up tweet and then they'll get the clarification. So you serve all purposes, basically. No, because the thing he's saying there, I've actually always thought that was the case. Like, this is not a joke. In the same way as NA gets overrated every year, mainly because the region we're talking about this all from, Reddit is an American website. Like, there's more Americans on there than, like, in this scenario, it's totally logical that people in that bubble would see America as good or they'd look only at the best. What they never get is, in the same way that every year they overrate NA and it never lives up to the billing, because, by the way, everyone's going to go, what are you talking about, Thorn? What about that year Cloud9 made top 4? Y'all never said Cloud9 was the best team, you dumb fox. Team Liquid was the best team, you idiot. How would that ever make sense?
TPA won Worlds.
Yeah, but no, that's what I was going to get to. But every year, it's been my experience that now that people know China's as good as they are, that's fine. We can put that out the way. But aside from China, the most underrated region was always LMS, and it was for two reasons. No one watched it, and because it had turnover of players, unless it was Maple, West Star, and that, they would never give them a chance. Like, they don't know. Everyone watching Worlds this time was going like, oh my God, this 4-4 guy's pretty good. It's like, where have you been? Where the fuck have you been? You've never watched the LMS, have you? That guy was literally the best midlaner for like last 2 years in the LMS. It's ridiculous. Like, that was not even a new player. It's not a rookie, So I agree. Like, if you look at the practice conditions they have, they also tend to, for such a small place, have like a fairly reasonable like player size. If you look at how many like, pros attempt to play and stuff. So yeah, I think that region gets completely written off. And as a result, if you look at their international results through the Flash Wolves and AHQ over the years, it's ridiculous compared to where the predictions always were. It's like every year everyone went like, fair enough, they did well last year, but this year they'll never be good. And it's like there was never a reason they couldn't be good, And so anyway, putting that to one side, so you put OPL presumably just below that then?
Yeah, so I'd say, there's like then, VCS, CIS, LMS kind of in all this mess. I think that, the fact that, I can't remember the team, but the CIS did super good against North America. I think they like went 2-1 versus them, but didn't make it out of the Plains group because of the way Plains works, because it's all, fucky. I think, that's kind of a mess in there. And then Oceania is just below the mess, is what I would say.
I'm guessing the CIS team was Gambit, right?
Yeah.
With Edward and those. I think Edward still plays it in the Dime Prox or whatever.
Yeah, they beat Clutch. Yeah, I think it was Gambit.
There you go.
Yeah, they beat Clutch twice and then lost a tiebreaker, which was tragedy.
Right, in that case, you've also brought up another perfect topic, which is this. I made this clear from day one in esports. It's actually why I'm still here. I am an elitist in esports. I don't give a fuck. What is there something wrong with?
A small correction with Unicorns of Love.
Unicorns of Love. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yes, but it is the team that Edward plays for. To be fair, good.
Yeah.
So. I've always made it clear I only really care about the best teams in games and the best players, and I'm only interested actually in other players, typically if like they're going to get to that level or they're on their way, as like a pipeline of talent. So I actually personally always argue against the Plains. I think they're shit, or I think they should be their own turn. Like, I hate the idea that, I know they call it the main event, so they sort of semantically get around what I'm saying now, but I don't like the fact that those teams like went to Worlds or like play in the first section, because like, for example, I just think it's kind of whack that if Doublelift was in the 4th best team, you're like, sorry, mate, you're not good enough to go to the World Championship now. Get Japan on stage. Like, oh, give me a break. Like, stuff like that, it drives me nuts as like an elitist, So that question is this, right? Are you one of these people? Because I feel like this is actually the case for people who follow those regions. Plains is a big deal, right? It is a chance for those guys to test themselves.
I think it's a little bit of column A and B, right? So what we used to have before Plains was a couple of tournaments called IWCQ and IWCCT, I think it was. And I think we actually preferred those tournaments because it was a bigger group and it gave you more international success against relevant teams. Like, if you get placed in a group with 3rd seed Korea, that's half your games and you're just going to get flogged on the international stage, right? So I think what Oceanic teams actually liked was, when you think of our 2015 run when we went up against Bangkok Titans for the last team to make it into MSI, we ended up losing, I think, 3-1 or something against them, but we'd beaten them twice during group stage. That was I think a 6-game group stage over, multiple games into 2 best-of-5s. And you think about how much experience you then bring back to your region from playing that, the amount of scrims you get against these good teams. I think that was when Oceania really started to thrive. I actually think that the play-ins format has maybe hurt the performance of the Oceanic region because you don't get that. You get these 4 best-of-1 games. You're probably not going to make it in the best-of-5 at this stage because of how it is stacked in that way. And I think that for the fans and from publicity, like, sure, it's great to watch your teams play against the best team in the world. It's horrible when they get murdered and everyone turns on the team, even though they're clearly the best team. They've nearly had an undefeated season.
Like that one game against the
team. Yeah, we should have said the second team because they would have done better against down one. You know, very logical thoughts there. So I think, like, I understand why fans like to watch it, but I think as someone that wants to see the region grow and improve, give me more games against the mid-tier teams so we can actually get better as a region. You know, we can actually get that valuable experience and not just get our asses kicked.
And by the way, I'd even say, like this is one of those concepts. I don't know if Loco agrees with me on this. Right, one of the reasons I always thought the premise that, like, just practicing with the best players, so for example, in League of Legends, going to Korea and playing Korean solo queue and scrimming with Korean teams, one of the reasons I never bought that as like the panacea that will make everyone better, in the same way as Golden Glue grinding the ladder over there, never made him be a god when he came back. You know, he came back, he was still pretty much the same player, but a little bit better, maybe just in his peak form. One of the angles that I always thought was weird is, remember, I come from Quake, a game where if you're even 5% better, you can win like 15-0 over the guy and dominate him. So if you're really, really better, by the way, I'll put it this way, this is no joke. When you develop in Quake, in fact, StarCraft Brood War was like this if you played it in 1v1 cops online. If you play someone better than you don't even actually, in many cases, have a chance to win in games. Like, there's just so many factors, like so many decisions. I mean, even if you do some... So actually what you have to grind for, it's very hard to have this mindset, is slight improvement or doing one thing where you catch, like, I caught him on one decision there. Like, if I can somehow remember what I did in that sense, I could apply that to my game. And you might never actually, by the way, be better than that guy. The idea is you're just trying to level your ability up. And in the sense of the Golden Glue aspect, you're just trying to get to your best, then go back to your region and be very good and hopefully one day be better.
Yeah,
but I think what that assumes as well is that they're going to play the way they normally play once recognizing that you're a bad opponent. Whereas what happens a lot of the time is these teams just turn off mentally and beat you purely mechanically. And what can you take out of a game where you've just been mechanically run over? Most of the time, it's nothing. And I think that that's what happens a lot of the time. And that's why people look at, down one in planes and they go, oh, this team is beatable. Maybe they're not the 5th best team in the world. Then they show up in group stages. They start playing properly again. It's like, no, they still have the 2 best solo laners in the game. They're not going to randomly run in 1v5 anymore. They're not taking the piss. And, they're playing the game in a structured manner.
Yeah, I mean, you can't teach players to dodge skill shots better or hit more skill shots, and whenever the skill gap is so large, like, you can't learn the big concepts. When the skill gap is like close enough and they're doing something better than you and you can take that away conceptually and add to your game, it's a lot easier to improve compared to what you were talking about, where if you're getting blown open, then you're just like, what do we do? Like, we need to scrim someone that's a little bit closer.
But as a result, basically my point was going to be this: I know that what I'm about to say goes against Riot's philosophy, because one thing Riot will not do, for good or for ill, it's up to people whether they agree with the philosophy. I'm not saying it's outright absurd, like objectively bad point. They refuse basically to do any kind of, listen to the words carefully, qualitative seeding. They will not try to seed all the teams based on who they actually think with the eye test in their brains that's better. They want it to be based on something like points or what. So as a result, unfortunately, they really do make the point that I make every year, which is they treat Damwon Gaming like a playing team. And then they treat teams like who won. I think the team who obviously wins LMS just goes straight into the main event. Now, the problem with that as well is, in light of what Spawn's saying, if you go to these tournaments and you want to test yourself, you want to improve, you want to do these things, playing Damwon actually does nothing for you. Like, all that does for you is you get battered. Even worse, as he's saying, hey, they almost certainly don't play properly. They don't want to show anything for the other teams anyway. They just style on you mechanically. And at the end of it, what did you learn? Is, if I want to win this game, I guess I should just be Showmaker. Like, you didn't learn anything from that, unfortunately. Like, it would actually be way better for you to play a team better than you, but just slightly above your level that you could maybe have a chance to test yourself against. Because it is just human nature. They're not going to try as hard, unfortunately. Yep. It also means as well, and I think this is something that sucks, is when a team does get a result, like when Unicorns of Love beat Clutch, as you're saying, when... who was it that Loki beat? Did Loki actually beat Damwon in a game? I'm trying to think. Who was it? Someone beat...
Yeah, Loki. They did the 2v1
right?
swap.
When that happened, okay, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, they beat Damwon in a game. Like, it's so sick. Like, unfortunately, we can't even know what that means. Like, so actually, what sucks is I can't even give like mad credit to the Loki team, because I don't... like, as you're saying, it was a gimmick move. Like, I don't know what that means. So, like, unfortunately, so for example, if that had worked logically, they should then have been a team that had a chance to get out, right? They didn't do shit after that. Like, it's like the real problem here I'm getting to is it's not just about having cool tournaments. There's got to be like a reason why you have the tournament. So what is the reason we're having players? Hopefully, as he's saying here, it's to give these teams a chance to do something on the international stage, and crucially, the best ones get into the tournament. I kind of agree. I think the international wildcard tournaments, the fact that they were a separate tournament when you didn't get any of the hate, because it wasn't like people were like, oh, Worlds, oh, it's this for a week. They were like, oh, if I want to watch that, I'll watch that. And then also you got the angle that I think even the format was better, wasn't it? Didn't you have like a group? It wasn't like MSI. Didn't you go like group into like semis into a final or something? So you get more series even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think that was a better format.
Yeah, and I think that as far as it was as well, you knew earlier into the tournament whether you were going to progress, and then therefore it was like the step by step with the better scrim. Like then you have like 2 weeks to go boot camp somewhere. So I think that the value of separating the tournaments was actually quite good. But that's obviously just from a purely analytical point of view. Obviously things like viewership metrics, the value you get for your sponsors and things like that certainly weren't the highs that you get to say we're going to play in Worlds play-ins.
Sure. Right. Okay. Let's get into some of these teams then. Right. I thought what we should do is this. Since we're going to do the LCS part later, let's try. We can talk about those players if they were in one of these teams they've left, obviously. But let's try to save some of the players that have gone to Europe and America for that point in time, just because that'll be a very interesting way to go into those teams, because you can give us some insight no one else can in theory.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. And let's just do the Oceanic teams for now. So, just to start out with, like who is in the Oceanic region? I know traditionally it was like back in the day it was like Immunity and stuff. There was a bunch of teams that were obviously the very famous ones. Is there like still currently an active core in the same way as Team Liquid has a currently active core? Is there like a great core that's always been like a legendary core, always made the finals? Is there still one active in OPL?
Yeah, so until this, I kind of actually had 2 of the players on the legendary core on my team. So that old Immunity team that you're talking of was made up of Swiper, Spooks, Swiffer, and Radier was like the core, and Rosie was their support. He got dropped later for EGM, and that was the team that when the OPL first started in 2015, they won the first 4 finals. And before that, they had won the 2 major tournaments before that as well, I believe, or 2 of the 3 that year. So Spooks and Swiffer had actually played together as a duo mid-jungle for I think the last 6 or 7 years. I should know it because I'm good friends with them. The reason I say they were is because Spooks just got announced as Golden Guardians 2-way coach, so he's now gone into coaching. He's like 26 years old. It was probably time for him to move on. But that core separated onto the Chiefs lineup, which is Immunity became the Chiefs. The Chiefs also, in other games, they're probably the biggest org within Australian esports. They had a couple of players stay there, and then Order, who's my organisation, we kicked off in 2018. We took the other half of that core.
By the way, just in case anyone's from another game and they're now going to try and contradict the literal expert who's done the entire fucking history of the region, obviously Renegades is not based in fucking Australia, and they never were. They just got a CS team because I fucking told a guy called Monte Cristo pick up the CS team. So for any idiot who's about to jump the gun, don't bother. You don't know what you're talking about. Stay in Loco's chat, subscribe for 10 more months, you shut the fuck up. So anyway, yeah, Chiefs, by the way, absolutely, I'd agree with you. Also in CS, they were quite relevant at one point in time, this is the one thing I wanted to ask about is, now that we have heard some of these other names are going over to NA, I noticed that there does also seem to be a flavour that reminds me of what's happening in LEC at the moment. So in LEC, the best example I can give is the classic AD carry Freeze. Now, if you actually watched the national leagues in Europe, which by the way, most people don't, I only watched the playoffs myself. If you watch those leagues, Freeze in terms of an AD carry absolutely deserves to be in the LEC. I can actually tell you LCS and LEC AD carries, I think, are worse than him, and obviously have none of his tenure. But the perception in the league is this. Even if Freeze is good enough, they think he would only be just good enough. So their logic goes, why would I put him as the 10th best AD carry and probably have to pay him because he's got tenure? Why not instead go for a guy that was a pure gamble because he's so young, but because he's a pure gamble, he could also get way better. And if he gets way better, I sell him or I've got an awesome player. So basically people would rather have the lottery ticket. So what I've noticed even about these players coming over is it isn't the classic players I remember, like Swiper, etc. People that have been around a long, long time and won many championships. It's the people who, as far as I can tell, it's the same thing, right? You're gambling on upside. Like these are people who've broken out more recently, is it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I think that's kind of crazy as well because we've just actually picked Swiper as our top lane and the announcement went out tonight. So, and I was kind of the same thing with DOS. I was like, Brandon, sorry. I was like, you're one of the first people that I would recommend to actually go to an academy squad because you're 26 years old. He's like the best captain in the region by a mile. He like gets up, he works out, he's very aware of his mental health and things like that. And you put him in a young team as like kind of the nucleus of the group. He's going to make everyone around him better. But it is the flip side. It is these players that have been around for, 1, 2, 3 years that are insanely gifted mechanically, but, maybe not the smartest player because they don't play the same macro game in Oceania. And it's those players, that have been picked up and taken overseas for sure.
Was there actually like hype behind the scenes? Because for people who don't know, one of the weird things about the off season, it's kind of like in line with what I said before, it's because everyone's so like focused on NA, you only really tend to find out stories that are about NA players or EU players or Korean players. So actually what you never find out is, so for example, whenever I used to ask my mates who were in the LMS and Chinese scene, I always used to say to them, like, logically, it makes no sense if these players speak Chinese, that they aren't just in the fucking LPL. Like, who the fuck's looking at Karsa in the era when they had like almost no junglers in the LPL and going like, I wouldn't want him in my team, even though he speaks my fucking language. Like, that's outrageous. But then they used to tell me, like, no, Thorin, like, if you know the behind the scenes, they are getting offers. They're just either turning it down or maybe they're in a fucked up scenario where the coach says you can't go, like. We won't get into the whole dynamics of Asian League of Legends teams, but it isn't as simple as free agency in the West. I'll just say that. So is it the case that in past seasons, like, for example, from going to international wildcard tournaments and being at Worlds occasionally, did big-name players from OPL, did they get the offers or did they get interest but then it didn't go through? Because we never really did have the big name go through. Because, again, even like Lost, I mean, that was a guy, as far as I can tell, again, and they were gambling on young talent, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lost is slightly different because he's like he's enrolled to do like medicine. This is a kid that got like perfect mark throughout year 12 and then decided to do League of Legends and kind of became a student of the game. So I think like he's slightly different. I guess the most famous one was
Yannick Boy then, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the most famous one was Radier because he went to a season 2 tournament with Doublelift when I think they were like first doing like 80 carries and stuff like this, and even Doublelift at the time was like, this guy mechanically is like a freak show. And they got a lot of offers from regions like Brazil and stuff like that, but they never got the big offers. And because it was kind of a like for like and you'd have to move away from home, you wouldn't be able to study at the same time, then a lot of these people declined those kinds of offers. But this is the first wave of kind of big international teams outside of Golden Guardians, because Nero has been involved in the Oceanic scene in the past, kind of looking at them as a legitimate way to bolster academy slots or even main roster slots.
Actually, on that line then, how about that angle? Obviously, one of the other weird things about League of Legends is nowadays, if anyone picks up a coach who's never coached in League of Legends, now listen, I know a lot of the coaches I flame for not having the great qualities. I do often think like that's a bit risky because in what people might not know is there's actually a brilliant coaching hierarchy in the game. Now, obviously, there isn't the same meritocracy. You can't prove as a coach in the same way with results that you're good, but you can get your rep out there. And the way you build your rep basically is you don't just go straight to the LCS. Most people, like if you know Peter Dunn, who was the Splice coach, for example, he had to fucking grind Brazil. If you know a bunch of these players, what you do is you go to Brazil or you go to Turkey or you go to Japan or you go to OPL. You go to a region basically where they are willing to give you a break because they think you have some like insight, you've done your research, you can write an article or study a VOD. Right? Has OPL had, aside from Minero was connected to it, has it had other people who we would know who were like famous coaching staff?
I actually know one personally. Wait, other than Raz. So what you said is completely true, where NA is like blocked off, where it's really hard to get a job in NA, so North American people actually go overseas a lot. Cave, he worked for Direwolf. It was Direwolf, and then I think one other team to Fnatic, then to Team Liquid. So it is something that is very common, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. You got guys like Raz that have done it as well. We actually had Frost Gurren when she was a freelancer helping us out as well. I think like there would be, heaps of assistant coaches that have done it behind the scene that I wouldn't be privy to, because that's the thing. Oceanic orgs like to kind of have their figurehead coach, which everyone knows and points at, and then they have kind of heaps of people behind the scenes kind of helping on the grind. But because a lot of the coaches do like to take a lot of the credit for the work that goes into it, you would never really know that like Kays was on Direwolves, for example, unless you had like active insight into a team like that.
He's also not bigging it up, is he? Come on, Kays. Don't forget where you came from, homie. When you fucking leave the hood, what do? You reach back and pull someone out. You don't fucking deny it. Come on, boy. What are you doing?
To be fair, like a couple of the players that have been picked up were certainly on Kays' Direwolves roster, and they won 4 titles in a row as well after the Chiefs did. So they're a pretty amazing organisation.
Stop trying to fucking memory hole that like that G2 MSI final. It happened. Now just fucking admit it, own to it. No, here's another thing I want to know, right? I'm going to ask this again. I'm playing the role of the naive everyman. If the naive everyman was fucking straight fired, just knew loads about these positions. Put that to one side. I'm just the everyman, Joe Blogs. So Loco won't even know what the term Joe Blogs means, which is the best part. He's thinking it's talking about blogs now. That's the best thing. I actually love fucking Americans. They're so stupid. Anyway, I've told Loco a million times, he's not Korean, he's an American. So here's the thing, right? Our question is this. It's a purely naive question, but it's based on a little bit of information, right? How do they even run the OPL? Because one of the reasons that I always tell people Australian esports cannot, New Zealand, that whole area cannot ever be any kind of big scale compared to any other region, is not even just player based and stuff. It's that if you know anything about the geography of Australia, I've said this before, there's a famous thing called the Mercator map. Go and Google this. Basically, the globe and the map you have been shown your entire life in school is not at all to scale. And I don't mean, yes, obviously it's not that big. No, I mean they don't make the continents the same size. So famously, they make Europe, which is tiny, look enormous. And they make Africa look like, maybe like 1.5 times bigger than Europe. No, it's way more. And famously, as people say, you can take like Australia and put it over like fucking North America. That's how big that place is. Yet it only has in the millions of people living there. It's not like 1 billion people. And so part of the reason why is you cannot literally live in parts of Australia. Obviously, it's uninhabitable. It's literally the reason why it was a fucking prison, mate. And then also, more importantly, because you can't, you have these pockets of areas. And sadly, there are areas, I don't know my geography, so I might be totally wrong here. Like, I think off the top of my head, isn't Queensland like in the northwest and then like Melbourne and that's in the east or some shit. And the problem is, that distance would be like Loco being in Hawaii and me being in the fucking UK and then going, just scrim together and go to the tournament in the UK with no money. I couldn't. Like, the distance is ridiculous. So what my question is this. Do all the teams live in one city to be able to do the league? Do they do some of it online and then do some? How does it work? And how logistically do they make the league work?
Yeah, and I guess to like use real examples, right? If you live in Western Australia, which is obviously on the West Coast, you get better ping to Singapore than you do to Sydney. So you're better off scrimming against Southeast Asian Counter-Strike teams than
People
you are
don't realise this shit. It's crazy, isn't it?
Teams, right? So the OPL is based out of Sydney, and there were last year 4 teams in Sydney and 4 teams in Melbourne, which is an hour flight, and all of the games were in studio. Sydney's a shithole as a Melbourneite, so we dragged all our players down to Melbourne, where it's actually nice to live, and just cop the hour flight once a week and put them over in hotels or Airbnbs. But that was the first year we really had like the infrastructure to create the split. Before that, there were just 8 gaming houses in like the west of Sydney. Most of the Counter-Strike gaming houses are in the west of Sydney. They kind of call it the home of esports over here, and a lot of the commentators live out there as well. I lived out there with Atlas and Loser Fruit and people like that pretty famously as well. So that's kind of where all of esports congregates in Australia.
Again, imagine I'm completely naive here. So if you were in Sydney, you couldn't, for example, scrim Koreans if they would even fucking want to scrim you on that ping. Like, you can't, basically, right? The ping would be insane, like 400 ping or something, 300 ping or something.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I guess like that's kind of where it comes in, is like you could argue that it's better to have a Counter-Strike team in the western area of Australia, because then you can get good Southeast Asian scrims. But because Dota's big in Southeast Asia, whatever, League of Legends not as much. Everyone kind of just goes to Sydney. That's where the server is. And for context, like our solo queue ping is 6 in Australia.
Oh,
so
cool.
Everyone lives there.
There's one upside.
On top of the data exchange nearly. So it's really nice.
Right, okay. Because in case people don't know, like that's another reason. Think about it logically. That means that essentially in the oceanic region, it's also hard to just make your name. Like you can't basically do what you can do in Europe and America, which is, this is the reason why, by the way, the most worthless angle ever is when a young player tells you like, right, I'm like in plat at the moment on NA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit school and I'm going to try really hard for 2 years. I'm going to go pro. It's like, you are never going pro, because you would literally be already like masters or high diamond if you had a chance. So the fact that you aren't in your spare time, no extra amount of time is going to do that. Well, the problem is, in theory, if you did get into Challenger as some nobody, you'd get some eyes on you. You'd get some, like, in the same sense, I'm guessing if you live in certain areas of Australia, like you're never going to get to the top of the ladder. It's going to be really hard to get your name out there.
Yeah, for example, my AD carry this year, his dream, he's from WA. So the year before he wanted to go pro, he's like high diamond. He took himself to Korea.
He means Western Auckland there, by the way. You remember, people don't know what fucking terms mean, mate.
Yeah, and then so then he came over and he actually moved himself to Sydney and, volunteered to live in gaming houses, volunteered to work on Riot, just scraped, begged, borrowed money to be able to actually support himself. And then with that, climbed to number 1 on the ladder board. And we actually picked him up as our AD carry. So there's people like that for sure that live like, 100 ping is probably the highest you get in this kind of radius, but 100 ping versus 6 is pretty significant. So I think that's kind of where the thought process comes in.
Switching to a different topic, one thing I was curious about was I saw that you guys had a few Korean imports. I remember like a really like Yakuza looking guy, like the guy with like tattoos and stuff, like
Volkan.
Yeah. Usually when you get Koreans in the region, like one or two things happen. Like they're either there for a paycheck or they get there and they actually help improve the league because they're
all there for a paycheck. Let's not be silly. This is not called bullshit.
Yeah. All right, some people like to stay in the region long term, and they actually contribute positively to the region. Like how has been like the Korean imports to Australia been?
Yeah, so we've had a couple actually. So we had Rays that used to play in the LCK and then also used to play in the LMS, I think, for a little bit. We had a guy called Miru, who's now come back. We had another guy called Mimic. He played on the Bombers and went to MSI this year. He's been here for 2 years now as well, and I'm pretty sure he's going to come back for a third. And then we had Volkan, who came over and actually went to the team Galaxstrasse or whatever they're called with GBM. I think he now plays on that team.
In Turkey or whatever the fuck I think.
In Turkey. The team that apparently doesn't pay their players, but don't want to get into that. So he's been tweeting a lot in Korean. I've been following along, trying to figure it out. But I think most of the time, people fall in love with Australia. If you've never been to Australia, you will not find this true at all, but Sydney and Melbourne are two of the best cities in the world. I think they're ranked 2 and 5 on the nicest place to live. Right now it's 27 degrees. It's beautiful. It's been sunshine all day, and everywhere that we live is brand new, because you got to remember our country's 100 years old. So all the apartments these guys are living in have never been lived in before. They're being treated like kings pretty much. So when you come to Australia, it's actually a really nice lifestyle. So whilst you might not get the best ability to earn a good salary as high as you would in North America or somewhere else, the actual quality of living is really good. And because we don't get that many Korean imports, when you have one on your team, all of a sudden they're the bee's knees, and you want to look after them, and you want to make sure that they like it here. So they all go out, they hang out with kangaroos and stuff like that. So I think that's why they come back. They really like the people. Australians are cool people, and then they really like the lifestyle.
Have you ever been to Australia, Loco?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay, I haven't either, but I actually know some people, real life people, who've been there, and they actually all corroborate what Spawn just said. Like one of them literally even was really considering moving there because, he says, the logic is, it's like that joke, that people make in America about homeless people, where because America is literally one big place, you don't have to get an airplane. You could, in theory, just travel if you could get the money somewhere. The joke is, why be homeless on the fucking streets of freezing cold Boston? Just be homeless in California, mate. It's fucking sick weather. You're pretty cool. You can go to the beach. You're still homeless, but it's a way better quality of being homeless. So the joke, similarly, as he's saying here, if life really is that chill. And I won't get into politics, but in the past, especially, actually, some of these places were pretty crime-free places as well. They were very safe places to have a family if you're in the suburbs there. Actually, people just say it's a sort of place where you don't have to be super materialistic. You can just live off whatever your salary is and just have a fucking sick life, and everyone's pretty cool. And for people who don't know, by the way, the reason why Australians sound like they're what's funny is because they swear so much, right? They sound like, if you're an American, probably really harsh. But that's the reason why British people love Australians, is because what we actually get is they just love banter. Because again, it's a laid-back lifestyle. It's all about just having the crack and just talking shit. Obviously, Americans, we're not talking about the drug crack. It means to fucking have a joke. Everyone's just got that vibe.
Yeah, in Australia, we say, if we call you a cunt, which everyone is now going to gasp, that means we're being friendly. And as soon as we start calling you mate again, that means we're getting angry at you. So that's kind of how we like it.
Listen, mate, not really fucking liking the way, exactly. Different world, that's all I'm going to say. Things are upside down there, Loco. I thought it'd be a good joke for him. I have to, levels to he can give people these jokes. No, so anyway, the thing is this, about the Korean angle. Has there ever actually been a Korean, aside from these current ones, has there ever been a famous Korean who went there, a washed-up one who just went for money, or just, again, maybe won the lifestyle or something?
Yeah, I guess Rays is the most famous Korean that came. I don't know. I'm going to pull up where he played because I'm just going to...
I don't remember he was in LMS. I think he was a jungler in LMS. Someone, maybe even one of the top 4 teams, I think. Let me have a look.
It can't be that
For Rocket, played for Jin Green Wings, Kongdu Monster, G-Rex.
Okay.
Yeah, he was on the G-Rex team. That team was at Worlds a few years back.
Yeah, correct.
It'd be hard, I'd imagine, because the best Koreans go to China and then the ones after that go to NA, and then the ones that can't go to NA go to Europe, and then the ones that can't go to Europe, they go to Brazil or Turkey, because Brazil and Turkey can pay, and then after that they go to Japan because it's nearby and they also pay decently from what I heard, and then it would be Australia, so they would be like number 6 or 7 on like the import list.
Spawn, I can give to you the advice that I've given to everyone in NA, which is, this is for real. If I actually was in your position, and this is in a world where I don't know what your investment's there, but say I had, in the modern day of esports, you could sell the idea of, Sydney's a big place, you could get an investor, I'm sure. In a world where I got investment, if you wanted to just dominate your region, one of the best things you could probably do is just get a Korean scout and just try and get someone before anyone's really heard of them. You'd have to go really, really early in your case, because obviously they're going to be scooped off by the fucking Korean teams. But actually trying to get some mad young talent wouldn't be that crazy, because I'm sure you can't pay megabucks, but some of these people, this is the thing that people never know about Korean esports. I always describe it like Hollywood. It's like everyone going there is naive and is willing to give up and just get broken through the system. And what no one acknowledges is, we all know in Hollywood, if you've ever been to a restaurant there, every fucking waiter's like, I'm a fucking actress and I'm a singer.
They're
and I'm
slashers.
It's like, none of those things. You just want to do it all. You're here, and unfortunately you haven't made it. There's loads of people in Korea like that. Like in StarCraft, they even did a documentary on it. It's a brilliant documentary. It's called State of Play. Not the movie with fucking Russell Crowe, you daft cunt, obviously. It's a brilliant documentary, though, because what it does is it follows a bunch of people at the different levels of Korean StarCraft. So it has Jae-dong, who's at the top. Then it has a guy, I think it's even one of the players who became a fucking famous player later, who's a second-tier guy. And then it shows the kid who's 14, and he's just going for the trial to get into the team to maybe have a chance to be a practice partner. And the idea is, spoiler, he didn't make it in the end. I followed Stark. So what you realize is, there's a lot of people who probably had a little bit of talent or had missed their chance, who are actually basically thrown away and will never make it. Where if people wanted just to pick up some talent that relative to their region would be good, I'm sure there's a lot there if people really looked into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing we have, which is really interesting, is a lot of the people that come to Australia are actually Chinese students that are super rich, and then they get sent here for university. So we're not going to talk about it in this podcast, obviously, because we're talking about primarily LCS and LEC imports. But a guy called VZR or Lovers that used to, he was one of the top laners for RNG, played a couple of games. He was actually in the OPL for a while whilst he was studying over here. Another guy called Chen Xuan went to OMG Academy. Then he came back and played for Avant Gaming, which was Rusty's team. Obviously Rusty, the shoutcaster that worked on the LPL, and now he's back over in China as well. So we have a lot of these students, and universities in Australia are great. And that's also one of you don't have to be a full-time OPL player. We acknowledge that we're a feeder league or an amateur league or whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
There are some people that play full-time, but a lot of people are doing their master's degrees, are studying university at the same time, and treating this how a lot of university students would treat a part-time job. You do 6 hours of scrims, you play some solo queue at night, you go to university during the morning, and then, you play OPL on the weekends. And I think that actually suits a lot of the lifestyles as well. So you wanted a backup plan because you're a reasonable human being that understands, only 0.001% will make it in esports as a career. It's actually not a bad place to be as well.
Okay. What's the future of OPL looking like? I heard Riot cut stipends, and then from what there's been a great exodus. I think it's 7 or 8 players that came over to NA. So I'm kind of curious what 2020 looks like for OPL.
Yeah, I think in total, if I count Papa Smithy, which I always do because he is Australian, there's been 10 people that have been kind of pinched or flogged this year, as we would like to say. I think that the stipend cut hurt. There's no doubt about it, right? All of a sudden, I'm moving out of a gaming house in Richmond to a gaming house a little bit more in the suburbs, which is, city to suburbs kind of thing. I don't think it's enough to kill the region. I also think that people kind of overreact when they say it's going to hit players' salaries first, because you can get rid of things like boot camps. You can get rid of things like nicer gaming houses. At the end of the day, as org owners, the last thing we want is kids being homeless and shirtless and stuff. We've obviously got a duty of care to these, in their most impressionable years of their life. So we're trying to look after them best we can. I think the big thing is that it's kind of happened in a double whammy, right? Is that we've taken this hit and then all of our big brands have gone. So we're certainly in rebuilding, but I think that a lot of the orgs are taking it as that interesting, opportunity of, okay, now if we're the NBL to the NBA, how can we get these relationships with between myself and Papa Smithy, where I'm hey, I'm going to sign all these players to 2-year deals and I'll trial them for you. Give me one of your coaching staff members that checks in once a month. I'll give you a scouting report on these players.
That's a clever idea.
Buy one of them,
a proper feeder team approach.
Yeah, like we will genuinely do that because the thing in Australia, you want a team that can become an international team for Counter-Strike, right? Because you can actually become a team that goes from Australia to the States and you could be, like 100 Thieves now.
Yeah, one of the best teams in the world for people who don't know.
Yeah, top 8 team or whatever they are at the moment. But in League of Legends, that's impossible due to Riot's import rules, right? So what you want to do is you kind of want to be the best team, have the best brand, and have these relationships where you can start making these dreams come true. It will give you a great story to be able to tell your sponsors and partners. It is a way that you can actually commercialize. And then you're also, helping make some of these kids' dreams come true. And I think that that's kind of what I'm looking at and approaching it. I think that in League of Legends, people going overseas from a minor region can never be a bad thing. It should not be the death of your region. Okay. If anything, it should stimulate people playing to try and be like Ryoma or be like FBI.
That's a very interesting take as well, because here's the thing, like people might naively think the reason you wouldn't want to literally put the team with the players in charge of like telling me who they are is if you want to dominate OPL, you want the best players, you want someone like Ryoma to stay in the region. But the difference is this is where people miss like the business reality. Like he's saying here, in light of the kind of money that the OPL teams are operating on, if you have a player like Roma, first of all, if you know him on a personal level, you're going to want him to have a chance to play in fucking 100 Thieves. Of course you are. Secondly, you're going to get so much for the buyout or potentially the scouting fee in this scenario that it would literally allow you to potentially go and get the next Roma and 2 more of them. And so actually, I don't think actually that these teams in this current setting, because as we've said, there's basically things limiting ever being able to actually properly go up to the level of the 100 Thieves in America. Mm-hmm. It actually would even make sense. I think it would almost incentivize everyone's best interests.
And I like what people miss, and I hate when people miss this because they try and treat League of Legends as this new undiscovered thing. It's never happened before. There's never been a sport that has, a great global league at the top and all these other feeder leagues underneath. Like that doesn't exist apart from the fact that it does with the NBA. Australia has a basketball league, like NBA players. Like I think one of the Ball brothers is playing over here at the moment.
Fuck, it's not Lamar. LaMelo Ball, yeah.
And there was Andrew Bogut, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew Bogut, and then you have like soccer or football is huge in Australia. Like we have such a migrant population that came over, after the wars and stuff like that. But they all go and play overseas as well. Tim Cahill doesn't run around in Australia. Like,
I'm going to go ahead and guess. I'm going to go ahead and guess. Like, I don't follow these sports in Britain, but I'm going to go ahead and guess if I look at the best fucking cricket team and the best rugby teams in Britain, I'm sure they have some Australian nationals on those squads, right?
Yeah. Exactly right. So all those
the concept's pretty well worn. Like it's not a brand new one, basically, guys. We've seen this works.
Yeah, and that's what I try and say to people. Like, stop overreacting. Stop saying this is an esports specific problem. This has been happening for literally ever in Australia. Like we're a small ecosystem. We're a small market. People use us to test shit all the time, like sales pitches and stuff like that. McDonald's will launch a new burger in Australia before they launch it in America to see whether people will like it, for example.
Yeah.
This is just that happening in esports.
Yes.
Like it's not new to anybody that is investing in these teams. They all get what's going on.
Right. What obviously the big problem so far is we haven't characterized any of the teams, talked about. So, so let's get some thoughts on some of the teams. So the team that won the last split was the Mammoth team, which was the team that Destiny, now the player going obviously to OG, came from. So was this actually the best team is always my first question. Because obviously if you ever look at results and stuff, sometimes it's not the team that's first place in the split that wins the split. So were they the best team?
Yeah, I think they were the best team by the end of the year. Everyone saw this team on paper, and it's kind of the mixture of the 2 Direwolves teams that have won the 2 years before that had got back together on this new org that had some capital money behind it. And they had Fantix, who I think is also going to 100 Thieves now as an assistant coach, as their coach. So this was a team that was kind of like they weren't the old guard. They were kind of the middle guard people. They're not rookies either. They're 2 or 3 year journeymen. They had already won a title. And then King was one of their players who has now won 5 titles. So he's the most winningest player in the OPL. And that team was expected to win from day one. They didn't win split 1. My team actually knocked them out in the gauntlet format. And then they pumped everyone in the gauntlet. They won the final 3-0. They're undisputed. And that's why I said on Worlds, this team should be the best team to ever represent OS because they crushed the Chiefs in the finals. It was not close.
Right, since you referenced King there, who obviously, since he plays the same position, as you said, it's like the double lift of OPL at this point in time. Is he actually also the best AD carry?
No, I don't think so. I think FBI was the best AD carry. He obviously won split 1 and then got imported and then his team lost. So I think there's a really good case that FBI was just insanely good. King's kind of the opposite player, though. Victor or FBI is a very strong side AD carry. You have to play around him. I think that's actually why he looks pretty bad in the LCS, because they don't play towards bottom lane and he just ints over and over again, for lack of a better term. Whereas King is much more of that cerebral player. He's played for a little bit longer. He's won five titles. He can play mages. He can play AD carries. He plays strong side, weak side, whatever you want. He's kind of a very versatile player. So he's definitely the most complete package, but he doesn't have the raw mechanical ability of FBI.
Right, since at the moment, I guess we can get into... I'll save that for later, actually. Let's just do some of the other OPL teams, and then we'll pivot to the NAs. And what we'll do is, the way we'll pivot into NAs, we'll talk first of all about all the imports, etc., that come from this region, then we can just do the more general thoughts after that. Cool. So, as you said, the team that came second was Chiefs, and they were obviously the team that was literally waiting in the final. So, on paper, I would probably imagine they could win the championship. This is one of those squads where, as you said, it's a number of players that people will know from the past in the OPL. So how would you characterize this team?
So this was a team that I thought was really, really dangerous because they're like the most consistent team. Like I relate them to EDG when EDG always used to win in China. It's like they weren't the best team always, but they would just always give you the 8 out of 10. And we play a very, scrappy style of League of Legends. And I think, the Chiefs would weather a lot of that, especially in best of 1 format. Then it gets to a best of 5 and you have to deal with maybe a team that can play more freely in their style, and they did get run over. I think that they were the most consistent team throughout the entirety of the year. They came second and third, I think, in both of the splits. They had veteran presence on their team, but they didn't really have that one superstar player to carry them in a grand final. Okay.
And then obviously, we take a grain of salt now. He's about to talk about a team he literally owns in terms of Order. So Order, as he said, ran the fucking gauntlet. They were looking pretty good. Tell us about Order without sounding too biased.
Yeah, for sure. So our team was really weird because we were the only team that made a grand final and then came third that had a negative win rate during the season. So we were wildly inconsistent. My AD carry player, Dream, had a wrist injury, actually, so he could only play half the scrims. And what I had done is in 2018, we had the best team on paper, kind of like Mammoth did this year. And then we came 4th and 4th. And that was kind of a big disappointment. I got rid of FBI, who's now in North America, and Rogue, and brought in a new bottom lane to try and fix the mentality of my team. They just didn't get along well as players. When you live together, you have to be able to get along. And I brought in a first-year player in Dream and an experienced person, Jake, who had been around the scene for 5 years. And that actually kind of mellowed my team out. But once again, really shitty games during the regular season, but big game players, in Spooks and Swiffer, when push comes to shove at the end of the regular season and into Gauntlet, these guys have won the league 4 times. There is a such thing as clutch. People try and tell me that there isn't a clutch factor in players. You're either good or you're not good, but there 100% is a thing called clutch. Swiffer, to get us into the Gauntlet, picked up a player that went on to the Penta. He just picked up a random quadra kill on Kiana, just out of nowhere. The game was probably over, and then he just killed everyone. And we had the same thing in Split 1. So I would say my team was the most clutch team in the OPL. I also think by the end of the season, we were the second best team in the league. We actually had a 5,000 gold lead versus Mammoth in game 1 of our semi-final before we threw it all away. So I think that, we certainly were an explosive team. We were wildly inconsistent, but I like to think we were very fun to watch.
Now, the funny thing is, because of the reputation of Koreans and the fact that so many have gone all around the world, if you actually look, even in Japan, they have Koreans. It's ridiculous. Literally, almost every region has Koreans, basically. People would assume, just because the way their brain works, the Koreans will probably just fucking style and dominate everything. Well, the 2 teams who came last in these playoffs were the ones with the Koreans. So, is there difficulty integrating these Koreans? Are they just not that good for Koreans? What's the status?
No, I don't think so. I mean, especially Raze and Totoro. Totoro was the other Korean I didn't mention. These guys have both played in the LCK. They're terrific players, and Raze is a little bit older, so he fulfilled a really good leadership role. And their English was surprisingly really solid. So I think that they were 2 of the better integrated players. Direwolves, however, did come last Split 1. Then they brought in these 2 players, and all of a sudden they were 4th. So I guess that kind of gives you an idea of how good they were. They went from winning 0 games to being a serious contender into the playoffs. Direwolves are one of the teams within the OPL. They have the best infrastructure. Sydney Cricket Ground is a very famous sporting arena in Australia. The Direwolves train from the Sydney Cricket Ground. They have a big room that overlooks the stadium.
Oh, kind of like North in CSGO then, where they're in that like FC Copenhagen Stadium or whatever. Okay.
Absolutely. Dave Harris is one of the owners of XL now. He was a previous owner of the Direwolves. So they have a really great ownership group behind them. They were actually one of the first teams that I would say like professionalized the OPL. They kind of showed everyone else what you have to do, otherwise you're not going to win anymore.
I've even just thought of a great fucking idea that bridges two topics we were talking about earlier. Even though, unfortunately, if you play in Western regions, you're not allowed to own two teams because that's just a thing, hypocritically, that Riot allows to happen in the LPL all the time. Oh, did I say it? It's only a fucking provable fact. Don't ever say that to me ever again in the West Riot games. Shut the fuck up. But even though you're not allowed to do that, you'd have to have, in this scenario I'm about to describe, it'd have to be like a feeder team relationship, you know, like you pay them a fee to be, I guess you'd have to pay them to act as an agent to find the player or whatever. Here's another angle that I would have. When I tell all the Western teams, like scout the Korean, if you want Korean talent, I tell them personally scout European players, it's the obvious one. But imagine you want like the next Chovy. You can literally get him as long as you get him before he's known as Chovy. As long as you can scout those skills really early, you could get him. This is the way. This is the final point, though, that would make it work. Say you get him at that point, so he's probably going to be 16, 15, maybe even. He's going to be super young. He'll have no competitive experience. He'll only have played solo queue. Here's what you do. You have a feeder team in Australia. You send him to Australia for a split. They put him in a team. He starts working on his English. He starts learning cultural aspects. He gets a little bit of competitive experience at a level maybe even he can compete at. Then you bring him over to NA if he looks like he's made the, you know, it's not a pure gamble at that point in time.
So there was actually a point in time in Australian esports that we had Dignitas and Curse in Australia as teams playing in what was beforehand the OPL. So Dignitas had, Dig AU and Curse had Curse AU. Obviously, Renegades was also looking at teams down here. If what happened hadn't have happened, I'm sure they would have had a Renegades in the OPL as well. I think like it's just a no-brainer what you're describing there. Obviously, the relationship needs to be different now, but that was certainly on the mind of very good team owners back then. Like Curse had a great ownership team. You know, Dig had a great ownership team. They had very much thought of this idea before we're talking about it, and that's why I think it's a good idea because you know if people like that are thinking about it, like it's probably a no-brainer.
Yeah. There's one last topic, by the way, before we pivot to the LCS stuff. And this is definitely one Loco can get in on here. He doesn't have to, it's not like one of those episodes face check where he just fucking mods the chat. Like this is actually, you know. And by the way, side note here, Loco, it's not wrong to take opinions from other people. Mm-hmm. You just don't take them. You just say, it's like Dom said on my show. Then you just say the opinion. Or you say Dom made this point and mate, I've called you out on this show alone for like 50 times that you said fucking ideas that were just someone else's idea. But anyway.
I definitely try to say if someone else said it, even in chat, like if Ender said this in chat or like Grab said this, like I definitely try to credit people, but let's go on.
You know what? I don't want to sound like your mom, but trying isn't enough. You've got to actually do it. Okay.
Thanks, Dad.
Well, to be fair, at least I was fair. I made it your mom in that scenario. Think about it, fans. Right? Here's the thing. This is the question. So I remember a discussion that was happening in the off-season, actually, I can't remember if we had it on this show, I think we did, was that a way that you could also help smaller regions like this would be get rid of imports to NA and EU, counting for the same for all regions. I already don't really know why it counts for all regions anyway. Like, why does it count if I take a nobody Spanish player the same as if I took Chovy? Like, that already seems like there should be some nuance to that rule. But I especially think for these smaller regions, I would count like VCS and I would even put LCL in this to give people a chance. If you made it so that these counted as either, I don't know, something fucked up like half an import or just not an import, but or maybe like a restricted import where you can only have one of them, but then they can go with the two other imports. Listen, it's not going to help NA talent. I'll tell you that right now. But I don't give a fuck about NA talent. I care about League of Legends. If people from America can't play League of Legends, get the fuck out and watch. Buy a ticket. That's what you can do in League of Legends. So what I would love to see is a player like Lost doesn't have to literally get a team to go, well, I'm going to choose Lost over a Korean, a European. No, they go, right. So is Lost better than this NA AD carry? Maybe he is actually. In which case, Lost gets to have a starting spot. Lost gets a job. Other players can have a chance to go over from these smaller regions. And even though, yes, I totally get it. If you only care about your domestic talent, it's going to suck. But for people who like the bigger, wider game, you're just going to get more talent in all the regions. It's going to be awesome. You could even potentially one day maybe even have Europeans import. I don't know that they would personally, but it's not off the table, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is they didn't implement this, but they implemented almost like a half measure. Like, didn't they implement something like what I'm saying, but for academy or something? What was the ruling that they did?
So exactly what you said. Like, you can get one minor region import in academy, and that does not count towards your import rule, but you cannot have multiples of them. But so I thought of it as they're going to eventually change this rule. And I talked to some people on teams, and I actually did get, I basically talked to people, and the current Riot ruling is going to stay within Academy. They don't have plans to make it in the future, but this can be like a good warm-up to it. So we'll have to see, but they don't have any direct plans. Like in year 1, it's going to be in Academy, and in year 2, we're going to allow it in LCS also. So there's no plans like that whatsoever at the current moment.
What do you think of that overall, Spawn?
Yeah, I actually think it's really interesting because I think the inception of the idea, and I hate claiming ideas, was actually there was a world where it was me, Christopher, Monte Cristo, whatever you want to call him, and Yamato. And Yamato was like, just getting into coaching at that point. I think it was 2015.
Must be season 5, I'm guessing then, yeah.
Yeah. And like we were all sitting down and we were just having, a cheeky orange juice or whatever you want to call it. And we were spitballing ideas out. And this was one of those ideas that like I said to Christopher at the time, like, what do you think about this? And he was like, yes, like I've thought about this multiple times because of the way I've currently structured my team. And I think this should be a thing, like, potentially as a writer, you should pitch this. So that was certainly something that I've brought up in the past as well. I'm all about, aspirational goals for people from a minor region that, if let's just use round numbers, right? If the best salary in OCE is $100,000 and the best salary in North America is $1 million, I want my player to be able to earn $1 million. Like, at a certain point, I've had multiple job opportunities overseas to like piss off out of Oceania. Like, I'm in this for a little bit of the love as well, and I want these guys to be successful. So I think that anything that allows an Oceanic player to have a crack at making their dream come true, like, just get it done. Like, I think it's only going to help the regions. Like, I can't see how this hurts the regions. Just bring up a new star, create a new personality, and if you can't do it as a team, fuck off and just make room for someone else that can do it as a team. Like, that's kind of what I've always thought about these players.
I'll even give you a counterpoint. Like, a very quick counterpoint would be, listen, it will hurt the region in the sense that you might have your best player gone from the region, but put it this way, unless he has absolutely insane success, if he gets dropped, he might just come back, and now you've got a star that you can bring back in your... You've got a guy that might have played at Worlds.
And give them some media training. When they get interviewed on the LCS stage, FBI should be saying, hey, I played at Bombers, who is the Essendon Football Club, who can sell a stadium of 100,000 people in, traditional sport. And I played for Order the year beforehand. And I played for Sim before that. And I had this great gauntlet. And, if you like my story and you're a fan of where I came from, go watch this region. Like, there's only 2 days of League of Legends in the LCS at the moment. They're only playing best of ones. It's not like it's an LPL or an LCK where you literally can't watch all of it unless you dedicate full time to it, right? You can make time to pick up a game of the Bombers if you're an LCS fan, and maybe see if you can spot the next FBI. And I think hardcore League of Legends fans and players would like something like that.
The problem with like the minor region import rule is something that Doran mentioned, or he disregarded, which is it completely shits on NA talent, and then you get situations like it's almost all imports and NA talent just does not have space to go anywhere.
But I always look at baseball in this regard. I'm not an expert on baseball, so this is going to be one of those, but I'm Australian, so I'm not going to not have an opinion because I'm not an expert, right? Yeah, but my understanding is they have so many imports into their baseball system, but everyone still loves baseball in North America. Like, you want double lift if you're a North American fan, in my opinion, playing against the other 9 best 80 carries in the world.
Yes.
Like, that's how the NBA works, right? It just so happens that North American people are also very good at basketball. But you don't want Luka Doncic or, Giannis Antetokounmpo or whatever not playing in your league because they're imports. You don't want them to not be able to create these teams. Look at the great San Antonio Spurs teams that had so many imports. Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, all these guys playing on the same team. Like, it's just a crazy rule to me in the grand scheme of trying to create the best league in the world.
Yeah. Someone made the point on Twitter, I can't remember who, it might have been Shakaras or something, one of the people who is in the scene that I know, I don't remember off the top of my head, I think they're totally right, is like, right, one thing you have to do when people make statements is think about what they're sub-communicating through that statement. Don't just look at the words. If you look at the surface, you'll get lost in it. As a result, someone can lie to you very easily. And basically, if I try reasonably listening to what all the complaints were there, some of it's like wish fulfillment. I wish there was 10 double F2 were already good. Yeah, that's great. But listen, Grandma, it's the real world. You have to fucking live with reality. There isn't. And I'm sorry, I'll probably make a video on this. You could put $1 billion behind all the NA talent and give them 2 boot camps in Korea with LS 24/7. And you know what? You might get one or 2 more licorices, hey, that might be worth it for you, but you will not get like 50 licorices, and you'll never get a whole region that suddenly will have as much talent as Europe or be as good as Korea and China. It won't ever happen. It's literally a logistical impossibility, essentially. Not least because, in my opinion, doublelifts are like fakers. They're outliers. They didn't come from a system. So what I would just say is this, is like in that kind of a setting, like what the person said to me is really all that complaining sub-communicated is not enough NA teams did well. Like realistically, let's be real. If Team Liquid had made the finals, everyone would fucking love them from NA, but justifiably, and you'd love watching them play. You wouldn't care that, well, wait a minute, Impact's Korean, and fucking Smithy's technically, like, what, he's from the Philippines, and then, like, double, you wouldn't give a fuck, Jensen's Danish, you would just go, fuck, we got a great team, let's cheer. So what he's saying is totally right. Like, the real problem is just that even with the imports, they can't compete. So it makes people go back to the angle of, what about all the domestic talent?
The other thing that I don't really like about the rule, and this might be a bit contentious, but I think it is really just a North American rule at this point. If you unlock regions, Korea doesn't change. China definitely doesn't change. I don't think Europe changes all that much.
Europe doesn't use its full import sauce.
So it's literally a North American rule at this point. And so people do try and say this is a global rule, it's going to impact everyone. Like, that at this point is just also a crock of shit. So, like, want to be really clear on that, like, I see this as purely a rule targeted at North America League of Legends.
Also, without making this a whole rant and bagging on NA, I'll just say this. I actually do think if you opened up the rules and they had no import rules in America, I actually know for a fact some teams would have all Korean teams. They would have wild mixes. I think actually not many NA players would be in the league, I'm afraid. So it does prop them up. But I actually think that in this sense, put it this way, this is one of the reasons why I got so tilted by when I fucking ranted about Poland being shit. People, unfortunately, like basically in their brain conflated me with, unfortunately, a popular sentiment that was in my country, Britain, at the time a few years earlier, which was that all the Poles are coming and bloody stealing our jobs or whatever, which is not in any way what I ever said in that video. But because people conflated that, they would imagine that I'm like against fucking foreigners and stuff, like keep fucking jobs for the people like that. Whereas I actually wrote an article about this years ago in StarCraft where I basically said, mate, you if people go with the angle like I can only support someone from our region, that is a bit fucked up, actually. There's something fucked with your brain, mate. Like, it's the thing. Do it if you're just a fanboy of your country. That's the only reason. But if you just like the game, anyone who likes the game can see how fucking genius Uzi is, how amazing Faker. Like, on some level, you got to be able to fuck with these players. Come on.
Yeah, and I think like the thing that a lot of people ignore is if one of the big things that hurts the LCS at the moment is their lack of solo queue ability. If you bring another 40 good players in, that props up solo queue. That starts to help. That happened in
Overwatch, mate. When they all went to LA for the Overwatch League, it was just like having the top Koreans in your solo queue every day.
It's like permanent boot camps, right? And if you even allow that to go through to academy, all of a sudden you've got twice that amount of people. And then if you actually start leveraging things like the university systems that exist in North America and the college system, I think you could actually have a much better pathway to becoming a North American professional as well. Is it going to suck for the next 3 years? Potentially. But after that, you're going to actually be training daily against, like, fuck boot camping. You're not going to have to boot camp because they're all going to be playing in your league. And you're going to have 100% of your time against the best players in the world.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem where North American development system is so fucked. Like, right now, like, our academy... Yeah, I mean, our academy is dog shit. Like, we have so much veterans. Like, we're using imports a lot of times. It's so hard for new faces to get in. Like, North America, I do think can be more open to imports, but it needs to come along with, like, our development system getting fixed, or we're just going to be an import region forever.
You know something here's a quick idea I even thought of, Loco. You can't do it now because unfortunately we've gone too far down one of these like branches of a decision. But here would have been a great way, if there ever was talent in NA to develop it, is when they used to have the promotion system that you yourself tried to go through, just make that the region that can't have that, the area that can't have imports. And so as a result, you can still potentially qualify for LCS, but you have to do it with domestic talent. What that would mean is if there's domestic talent, people will invest in it and they'll get the best players and they'll try and win the LCS spot. Like, the problem is, even in the challenger scene, people like you just were gaming the system with Koreans. And I don't blame you. If those are the rules, that's what you do. But in that scenario, that would prove if there was any talent, because it would incentivize someone who wants to one day have an LCS spot to grind and get all the best domestic talent. The problem is, like, again, these are all great hypothetical ideas, but it's not like the experiments haven't been run, boys. Like, we just don't, the players aren't out there. There's no faker hiding behind a fucking desk that we haven't found. Come on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think as well. And I think that team structure is something, like, the last thing I'll say on this whole debacle as well is that team structure is something that needs to be really looked at in the academy system of LCS because I see like two extremes, right? People like kill all the veterans. If you've played more than 3 years of LCS, I never want you in academy ever again.
Yes.
And then they're also like only rookies. And I think there has to be a hybrid. And you would know this, Loco. You come into professional League of Legends and you understand how the mechanics of the game work, but you do not understand a team system whatsoever. And you need someone to teach you that. And that's where veterans are useful. That's why if someone like an Smithy ever went down to academy and people were like, he's a cash cow, I would be like, hopefully he is teaching these guys how to listen to a shot caller, how to actually follow a structured system. And then you also need people that are teaching these people to be good people. And I say that because a lot of people, have messy rooms, they just get Uber Eats, 6 meals a day. They want a Coke instead of getting off their ass. They're just calling an Uber Eats driver and they're getting a Coke delivered. And I think that performance is all of these things mixed together. And the best example I can ever give of this is actually the 100T's roster again in Counter-Strike, where they were a mess. And then they got NAF. And
he's one of the best players in the world if people don't know when he's in this team.
And from everything I've heard from people on that team, Lee has actually played on order. So, take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, was on the next iteration, but everyone only sung his praises.
Right.
Like what he used to do in reviews. And I've seen it first time. So I also have Usilla, who's a Counter-Strike player. So once again, probably
used
over
to
a
be
lot
in Renegades as well.
Used to be in Renegades. He came back to order, and my team's average age was 19. And immediately, just the dynamic of the team changes like instantly. So that's where I think, like, let's not go ham on crucifying these veteran players for sticking around in the academy. But there is a certain point on team ownership and team coaches to be able to structure their team in such a way that they are getting the skills that they need whilst also developing, 2 or 3 young people to hopefully make LCS one day.
And let's go into the oath imports. But the final thing I'll say on the academy topic is the huge problem is new players in NA having actual opportunities. They're just so far in between. Like, don't talk to me about collegiate. Like, there's literally low diamond players in collegiate. Like, it is not a real opportunity for players to develop and be ready to be pro. Like, we'll talk on it separately one day, but yeah, like academy system right now is dog shit in NA.
There's low diamond players in there. You want to get that degree? I can hook this up for you, bro. You want to be a pro? No, listen, Loco's obviously never going to be a pro again. Not least because if you look in the background of his room, apparently it's like that's a fucking underground area. He's going to put like all beans on that shelf there in case the fucking Walking Dead happens or something like that. But enough about the LCS. Anyway, right, let's go into it. So here's the thing. Before we jump on the LCS side, since it's only one player, right, give me your thoughts on Destiny, the new support player of Origin. Now, obviously, he's coming into, by the way, a very high-pressure situation because Origin, the team, people think is a big deal team, to second in spring. Even though I've kind of said, I hope people temper expectations. They don't have as much money now. They've also obviously got a whole bunch of super veteran players, and he's literally replacing probably the greatest support to ever come out of that region. Even though people are going to go, but what about Yellowstar? Like, I count players differently when they have shot calling elements. That takes some of that out of the equation. So, like, is this a player where he was clearly like a top talent in the OPL?
Yeah, so he was definitely a top talent in the OPL. Just speaking on kind of how this happened as well, because I kind of have some behind the scenes stuff, and I'm sure they won't mind hearing this, is Mammoth, obviously Destiny's team went to Worlds and was scrimming in Europe and was scrimming against, a mixed team. I think it was a hybrid team during the offseason. This would happen all the time. People would understand. And there were a couple of coaches in there just watching. And one of them was one of the assistant coaches of Origin. And he just watched Destiny absolutely destroy a bottom lane. And then, re-Q, go again, absolutely destroy a bottom lane. And then, as in all things, you jump in comms a little bit if you're a coach and the team will allow you. And you listen to this guy and he's super vocal. And he's one of those players that, like, if he makes a call, it could be the stupidest call in the world. But the way Destiny says it, like, 5 people are doing a dumb call, like, instantly. And that was the kind of blind faith that Mammoth had in him. And they were like, obviously Mithy is one of the pillars of our team. And, he's one of the very vocal members as well. We think that we would need a support, that, has similar attributes and we could train up. And he's just, we call him Osmata for a reason. Okay. Like, his Alistair and his engages were, like, insane. I'm not going to say that he's on anywhere near the same level of Marta because that's also insane. But this is a guy that is super decisive, has the best engaged champion pool in OS, and we were terrified of him. Every single time we played them, we would triple ban support.
By the way, just in light of what he said there, I'm actually going to drop a jewel now. That won't mean anything to fans, but if you're in ownership in League of Legends, and by the way, any fan who thinks these people don't watch these shows, they do. It's one of the reasons why I even agree that too many of them go off narratives, because sometimes they'll go off some whack shit that we say that when we don't necessarily know, like what the relationship with some players is. They will recruit fucking players based on shit like that. So all I'll say is this: I'm about to drop a fucking jewel of the esports industry. So if you're out there, owners in LCS, LEC, Ben Spook from Misfits, this is how you game the system. Because everyone else is gaming the system, and if you play by the rules, you're just behind in the system. Don't poach. I would never tell you to do something like that. That's against the rules. But you know what? If in the off-season, your players have a few fun ranked fives where 4 of them play, and they bring in a player from an outside team for a fun ranked 5, you could probably get a real nice sense if you played well together. And you know what? Of his own accord, that player might go and ask to be open to transfers, and then you might ask that team. And then you know what? At that point in time, listen, this is playing League of Legends. Riot can't ban people for playing League of Legends. You see what I'm talking about? We're not literally talking about break the rules. You go around the rules. That's the point. Okay, just a little gem there. People won't know how much value that fucking statement is there, by the way. Like, people waiting for, like, but Thorin, the transfer window hasn't opened. Yeah, the transfer window's fucking closed, you daft cunt. We came through the door. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
okay, yeah,
I told you, Loco, if I ever got involved with teams, mate, I'd be some Bond level villain shit. I'd be fucking wrecked. I'd be like Perks if he actually literally said he did that shit. Like, you know. Anyway, do you want to say something about Destiny?
No. Let's go to LCS, and there's like an overarching topic between oath imports and actually Korean imports and European imports to a certain degree that I want to ask Spawn about. I had to talk to coaches after I heard about all these oath imports because, as he said, FBI was like one of the top tier players from Oath, and he came over and he wasn't very impressive. So I was shocked when all these Oath players were coming over. I'm like, the level of these players just don't seem very good. Like, why are you guys picking these up? And one thing common that I heard from a lot of different coaches was Oath players want to be here. They want to get better, and it's do or die for them. Like, they don't have a second option. Like, going back to Oath is not a career move. They either succeed in North America or they will die. Like, when Korean players and European players come here, like, sometimes it's very obvious they come here for a paycheck and they are very chill about things. But for these Oath players, like, they either make it...
You missed a detail there, Loco. The key detail is this. This is just the distinction I'd make. The Oath players are still coming for a paycheck, but they're also coming from a worse region. This is their dream. The player from Europe, I mean, Veteran Mix's point on the show I'm about to release soon. To him, he actually thinks the reason why you shouldn't import, like, Koreans, for example, into Europe is because if you've already got talent anyway, even if it's Chovy, him agreeing to come to Europe almost admits that he's not committed to being the best fucking player in the world anymore. So it's like, you're not even getting Chovy. So in that scenario, yes, they're going for a paycheck. But I think the bigger concern is that they're going for a paycheck, and even in their mind, they're like, and it's the worst region, and I'm not going to go fucking 100%, and I'm just going to try and play an NA. It's like, that clearly is a distinction, right? I'm guessing the guys coming from Australia, this is the one shot if they want to be a big-time pro.
Yeah, I want to pull up the tweet because Ryoma said it better than I ever could. Like, I think he was in North America for 27 days or something, and he was already 1,000 points challenger, and he'd already played, like, on average 8 games a day, and he hadn't had a game whilst being in North America where he hadn't played a ranked game. That, to me, is like the level of dedication you're going to get out of every single Oath player. And you're going to know really quickly whether you have to throw them back. Like, once again, these guys aren't on the superstar salaries that other North American or imported players from Korea or Europe are on. So, you know, if you get 3 of these guys wrong and then find a 4th, you're probably still saving money at that point if you are one of these North American organizations. And I know from different orgs, you know, that they're boot camping these players with specific role coaches. They're taking them around the world. And, like, these O's players are now all fighting over the opportunity to be able to live this life. Like, this is a huge thing for these guys. They're going to give you 10 games a day plus scrims. Like, they're going to really want to be in this league. And that's why I think, like, it will eventually work, because you're going to, like, work ethic, in my opinion, trumps all. Like,
of course,
you know, you might not be the best player today, but if you work your ass off, you can be the best player tomorrow, or, you know, 2 years down the track.
Basically, the Korean, that's the real secret of Korea, we all know.
Yeah.
Work till you die.
Like, yeah, that's what you're going to get out of those players. Like, they're super hungry. And the other thing is they're also not going to complain, because they're not coming from a better environment. They're coming from Oath, mate. Like, they're coming from, as I said, they've got nice features and stuff, but as far as the league goes, like, not making great money. They're, all moving away from home to be able to do
They've got 99 problems, but a beach ain't one.
Yeah, exactly right. I think you just hit it on the head. I'm glad that you said it before I did, but I guarantee if you take a tally of the games that the OCE imports have played in ranked and scrims by the end of the year and put them against any other player group, if they're not first, I'll be fucking embarrassed for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Korea, if Korean players come over, they complain about the ping. And as you said, both OCE players and Korean players have single-digit ping. Like, Korean players talk about how shit ranked is, and the OCE players are spamming games, so the mindset itself is so different.
But I'll give you the example, right? So we all used to play on the North American server. Mm-hmm. I used to play on the North American server. I had 252 ping. When the Korean server opened, everyone left. When the Oceanic server opened, the pros stayed because they valued the quality of the opponent over the reaction time of the pings. Now, ultimately, they did come over eventually. But when we play Overwatch in Australia, we play against the Koreans. We scrim on the Korean server. We play against the Japanese. We scrim on the Japanese server. Like, we have no ping advantages, but the level of gameplay is low. So we're willing to take the hit. We'll scrim against North American teams. We'll take the 250 ping in an FPS game that is reliant on aim and timing to get the experience of what the game should feel like rather than train against worse opponents. So I think that we are much more used to having to push shit uphill to make stuff happen in esports. And that's why I'm really excited about this playing group. Because do I expect FBI to be, double lift today? Double lift memed the shit out of him on Reddit the other day. But if Double Lift isn't worried about him, eventually, I would say that's short-sighted because FBI is a grinder and he will get there one day.
Okay.
Well, let's pivot to that then. So one of the first teams we can talk about is Golden Guardians, because one of the problems with this move here is, first of all, because FBI was in the team from last year, and if you look at the rest of the team, it looks like they just basically either decided not to spend money or no one wants to join Golden Guardians. And unfortunately, it can't be entirely the latter, because people like my boy Freeze and others would definitely have joined Golden Guardians. They would take that paycheck in an instant because they still get to play in a big league. So people are immediately going to lump FBI in with the NA players that they don't think are good, and they're just going to dismiss him immediately. So when he got to play last split, I will point out, he wasn't the starter from the beginning of the split. He played a good chunk of it during part of the split, and then part of the issue is, though, he also did have, and you always have to judge AD carries this way, his support was role swapped Huhi, the former mid laner of CLG. So I personally, I don't think Huhi's that good a player in general anyway. So I find it hard to know where to come down on a player. To me, FBI was weird in the sense that they got rid of Deathly, who was only laner and then couldn't do shit in a team fight, and then they got FBI, who felt like the other way around or something. What would you say is FBI's what should his level be at now that he'll be in a first real starting spot in a real team, not brand new to the LCS?
Well, I hate to kill a guy, but it's not going to get any better because Keith is his support, right? So, he's gone from a...
Can this guy get a motherfucking break? He came all the way from the other side of the world. He doesn't even get a real support. What the fuck is this shit? How about just someone who plays support? Not Litucan. Not fucking... Who is he? Oh, fucking guy who won LCS one time. What a joke. I always say that, Loco. You know my fucking straight fire line that just highlights how insane the level of Europe is that the worst mid to ever win the LEC or is Prime Febervan, who obviously people know was very good. Who he had won a fucking championship in NA. Homie, please. We've got to start just being real. This is an intervention. It's I feel sometimes when I'm talking to Loco, I feel like the fucking character Michael Caine played in Inception, where he's Dom, well, except in this case, Loco says Dom all the time. You've got to come back to reality, come back to your family, leave the dream world. That's when I'm trying to bring Loco out of the LCS, back to reality. Come on, remember Korea? Remember how it was? Remember all the times none of them ever beat you or were really harsh to you and stuff, because only one person would ever do that people all lied about in the LCK. Jokes aside, little fucking gem for everyone there. So in this scenario, what do you actually think of FBI, Loco? You saw him play a bit. I think you actually were fairly positive when he first came in the team, right? I mean, to be fair, we did all flame the fuck out of Deathly, justifiably so. You're also not on Cloud 9, homie. Weird how that works, isn't it? Weird how they got rid of their AD carry, didn't bring you up. Yeah, but guess what? Because Reaper's ego hasn't decided yet to ruin the AD carry position. Fuck you. Anyway, whatever. Keep going. I settle too many scores in my rants. That's the problem. I realise I'm not even talking to the people, am I? I'll get to you later, Reaper. I'll see you at the end of 2020, homie. What do you think of FBI, Loco?
We can talk about the Huhi aspect of it, but I thought he was disappointing. I was told this guy is mechanically really good. I always get told these OCE players are supposed to be insane. I get told Shermfire he's going to be insane. wasn't that great. I get told FBI is going to be insane, not that great. Lost is going to be insane, somewhat okay. It's just
Loco, how good do you have to be to get top 5 on Korean server mechanically?
Pretty fucking damn good.
Sure, and FBI have done it, mate.
So they have the mechanics, but for some reason, it's not
They're
translating.
mechanically pretty good.
It's not translating on stage.
Okay.
We can both admit like they're good because they have hit that limit in Korean server. They have hit that top 5. But on the LCS stage, those mechanics are not showing up for certain reasons.
And that's what I'm saying, mate. Look at this team. Haunter, Closer, Golden Glue, Keith. Who is a leader that is going to teach FBI how to play the game on this team? Who's the leader that's going to be like, whoa. When we give resources to Haunter, you have to be willing to sack 2 waves. You know, you have to be willing to go down 30 CS and lose bottom side and lose your turret because we're going to win the game elsewhere. Like, there is no leader on this team. Like, this is a team of, like, journeyman player, and I'm going to be honest here, like, I don't rate Golden Glue, I don't rate Keith. So, like, he is going to be flanked by a mid laner and a support, probably the 2 most important roles as the primary carry of a team with no leadership experience. You put this guy on a team with Bjergsen and Core JJ, I guarantee you they teach him how to play the game. And that's why I don't think the structure of these teams is good enough to bring any import into. Like, fuck that they're from OCE. Like, you bring a Korean import onto this team. Like, go get Def considered on this team. They're not winning the LCS.
Yeah, by the way, I'll even add in there, like, I totally agree with the premise he's creating there, which is, like, it's not even just about your raw skill level. Like, when you go into LCS, there's a million factors. Pressure on stage, what your team lets you do. Like, I've heard some outrageous stories from, like, challenger teams in Europe where, like, you know, one player was just being told, like, just camp for the fucking mid laner all game long and get loads of levels behind as a jungler. If you watch that from the outside, you're just going to go, he is an idiot shit jungler. You don't know that his team basically told him, like, you're sacking your entire fucking game for some shit that the other guy does. And then, you know what? Then everyone will say, the bloody mid laner has no fucking jungler. It's like, he's propped up by him, you moron. So the problem is, there's so many factors that go into it. And so I would just say, in terms of the mechanical angle, that doesn't surprise me at all that this player wouldn't be able to do it in that level. Like, it ain't about raw mechanics. Like, a classic example I always give, and I love it because it shows anyone who knows what I'm talking about gets the premise, and anyone who doesn't just exposes that they don't get the premise. So when I say the following statement, people are going to lose their minds. In Season 4, 2014, Shifter, who played for Coast and Dignitas, was mechanically as good as Bjergsen as far as I'm concerned. This guy had a lot of fucking talent. I watched him a lot in solo queue at the time. Any times that he went off in big games, he's a very skilled player. He didn't have any of the mentality of Bjergsen. He didn't seem to have the same crazy work ethic. So you know what? As a result, they never were truly in the game and on stage a comparable set of players. But that's the point of why you need coaching and veterans, and you need good teams and good environments. That's why, to me, I hope in the future, the problem in League of Legends is they mix all the rosters up on a lot of the teams every year. I actually think that's a flaw. Like, one of the things I think Team Liquid did right, but they just did it because they had the best players, is in games like Counter-Strike, the thing we learned is the most OP thing you can have is, it's not that you can't change players. That will fuck you. If you hold on to the players that have gone bad, yeah, you will never stay at the top. The way you stay at the top, though, is you keep a core of players, 2 or 3 players, who play together. They don't drop off, and it allows you to just replace the other parts that are faulty. It's like having a machine. You don't have to replace the whole machine. You replace the faulty part. And if you do that, all I'm going to tell you is this. The greatest team in the history of CSGO that's won the most majors won literally 3 of those 4 majors in the last 2 years. But 3 of the players were playing together since 2013. They've been playing for 6 years. So the point is, since they didn't drop off in terms of level, their understanding of each other, history playing with each other, history in different meta, everything is unparalleled. That you can't fuck with that. You could make the best team in the world 1 to 5 separately now, and how could they ever compete on that particular metric? You wouldn't be able to. So I actually think that's one area where it's really overlooked, is the idea that you can just, like, especially, I actually think CSGO is more of a plug and play game than fucking League of Legends is. League of Legends, there's so much to how the team wants to play, what you're meant to do, what the meta becomes. Like, you really can't take these pieces as though it's like, right, we gave this guy 10 games, he will never be a good player. It's like, it's really tough to make those calls. Listen, we do it on this show because the nature of this show is it's the hot takes in the moment, isn't it? We're not literally sitting down, like, writing the fucking manifesto of what we believe. Like, we sometimes have to go a bit crazy. But I'm even open to the idea some of these players can be better and get a second chance.
The weird...
Go
ahead.
I was going to say, the thing I like about this team is there should be no egos. Like, in my opinion, you're all middle of the wrong players. No one is the best in their role. So if there is a team that just has an idea about how to play the game and goes out and executes it, like, a coach's dream, if you will, that can probably get you middle of the table in this year's LCS. So I'm not dooming them to last, but what I am saying is this is a team in my eyes outside of Forza that doesn't really have a star player.
Yeah.
And we've seen that in recent history, playing around top side of the map is a terrible way to play the game. So
yeah, especially with the Dragon Soul changes. Like, it's so worthless to go top right now, and Dragon it has way more value than ever, and Rift Herald got weaker too, so... Yeah, it's going to be really weird where their best player is top lane, but you don't want to play around top lane, and mid and jungle is still one of the most important roles, and they have Golden Glue, and I have no idea how good this closer guy is going to be. Like, we saw him a little bit in play-ins at Worlds, but I heard he's not the best when they're playing from behind, and this team's going to be behind so often.
Here's the thing. I don't know what your general thoughts is, but like when I see the teams, admittedly, some of the rosters aren't officially complete. We only know them from rumors. And in fact, I'll make this statement with the full context. Technically, we don't even know for one team definitely who the mid laner is. So imagine me saying the following statement without knowing the mid laner of a different team in the league. Golden Guardians is the worst lineup in the fucking LCS. Like, if you just look on paper, even the team who doesn't have the mid laner, the rest of the players already, that's enough. Like, Golden Guardians looks terrible. So I agree with Spawn. One of the first things I'll do if Golden Guardians have any sort of traction is I'll say, you know what, in Aero, people dissed you for the other teams. You must have done a fucking cracking job here. Maybe you could mold these players. Maybe they were open to it. And then I'll start to give out credit as I see the players give the performance, you know.
And if one man can do it, it's Raz. You just got to get Raz a little bit of
and he's obviously
juice
assistant coach now.
He's academy head coach.
Yeah, academy head coach. They've brought over Choo-Choo, who was my coach this year, as to help out Raz, and they've brought out Spooks, who was my jungler, to be a two-way positional coach. So Inera was also my coach when he was in between gigs of, was he at Echo Fox? Echo Fox to Golden Guardians, I think his journey was. So I know this team pretty well. I think they're going to struggle as well, but I am hoping they're the coach's dream, because that's when you learn how to play the game. If you actually sit down as a group and like come on an understanding and try and take a journey together. If this team starts infighting because of egos, like there's no way they win many games.
Going to another player. This player is actually on Academy, but he's very hyped up. I heard about him for forever. Shernfire on TL Academy. What can you tell us about Shernfire?
What position does he play? Give like the basic info. There we go.
Okay. Jungle. He's made top 10 multiple times on the Korean server. He won like 4 OPL titles, I think. He's been internationally like a bunch of times. He kind of choked on the international stage really famously. Once he came off a competitive ruling, they won a game with Ubisoft, and Shern came in as the Oceanic MVP and entered his ass off, and everyone was like, he's terrible. But once again, this is a guy that's been top 10 on the ladder. He was ranked 1, 3, and 7, I think, on North America at some point. You know, take that with a grain of salt. And very farm-heavy carry-style jungler. If you like the jungle position to be played in a different way, you're going to like Shern. If you like your traditional Lee Sin, you know, Rek'Sai kind of players, you're probably going to think he's a ball hog and he's trying to do everything himself.
Okay.
How good is
let me think.
What kind of success did he have in OPL in terms of like competitive?
He just said he won 4 titles. We listened to that.
Yeah, sorry.
He didn't lose league when he was in it.
No.
You know what, Loco? Admit this right now. One thing that you have to also give me credit for that people don't understand about talk shows is just watch when Travis does a show. Watch what you just did there. I'll listen while I'm thinking up my thoughts.
Yeah, both.
That's a fucking skill. It's a pass. It's a skill you have to train, by the way.
No,
it's like playing bagpipes. You're doing 2 things at once, but it's hard.
It's not that I'm not listening. It's I'm prepping the next question, so I missed part of what he said.
That's why it's a skill you have to develop. So I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying that it's a skill you have to operate on, mate.
Yeah.
You know. What were you going to say? Sorry, Spawn.
I was going to say, like, so as long as he was in the OPL, he was winning the OPL. Until he got shadow banned or whatever happened. I actually don't know what happened with him. But until he was gone, there was no hope anyone else was winning.
Yeah, this guy's been trying to make it for, like, forever. I remember even back in, like, 2015, we were in Korea, and this was, like, the Dardock era. So when Josh was, like, kind of going off, and we still had scrims booked.
Back then, all that time ago when he used to go off.
Yeah, he's much better now.
Yeah, I've heard he is, you fucking cocksucker. Keep going.
So anyways, when Josh was going off and we had scrims booked and we needed a jungler, like for some reason, Shernfire was in Korea, so we played with him. So I remember like this guy's been trying to make it in NA forever, and then he got banned. Like teams have been like a little bit like dipping their toes with him, so finally good to see that he's getting a shot with Team Liquid, like one of the best orgs in North America, and curious to see how he's doing in Academy.
Okay.
All
right, here's what we do now. I don't think we need to talk about Golden Guardians anymore. The only other angle to even discuss on them, it's kind of a played out angle, because obviously in the past we've always flamed them when they just went with whack NA players and didn't spend the big bucks that they should have done. So the only angle I can really even say, aside from I think this team is bad, is like, I also think it's fucked up that they didn't recruit some of the other good players and some of the players that didn't get, like, for example, like, what does fucking DeMonte have to do? Who does he have to kill or fucking marry to get in the team? Like what has he done? I don't even get the angle. Like, even in terms of memes, Golden Glue isn't a particularly better meme than DeMonte. Like, I just don't get how you've made this decision. So my only other angle for Golden Guardians is just players you didn't sign. So I feel like that's just an endless pit of, we're going to be talking about that for a long time with this team. So let's switch to another team. Mm-hmm. So another team, in fact, I would say the big team that brought in the import is obviously 100 Thieves. Because this was a team where the interesting detail about bringing in the import is they used their import on the mid lane.
Yeah.
Now, the idea that you use the import on the mid lane is normal because you're coming from, as Loco said, bigger regions, better regions. The idea is he's definitely better than the NA talent. So it's actually a big statement by Papa Smithy here, because, by the way, Papa Smithy's essentially saying, this guy's better than DeMonte. He's actually putting his stake in it. He's not Golden Guardians even, by the way, where he can go with that whack angle. He has to take it on the chin that he thinks this player's legit good. Now, I heard behind the scenes that is not unjustified, that actually the hype around this player, basically from people in OCE, is that he could actually be this really sick player and that it's worth the gamble. Like, where do you come down this spot?
So Ryoma is FBI's best friend. They played on a team together called Sin for 2 years, I think, year and a half, 2 years. He then went to the Chiefs and made Chiefs instantly the best team in the league, and they choked in a final. Like, that Chiefs roster actually had Destiny, Ryoma on it, Swiper, who's their top laner. Like, the fact that team lost a grand final was just mind-blowing, like, to be honest. So I think that this is a guy that is so good at, like, most aspects of the game, and then terrible at the aspects he's bad at. And so what I will say by that is, like, we used to build strategies around how to beat this team when he was on it. Like, I don't think Ryoma, without FBI, actually ever beat my team in a best-of series because he was a very predictable player. But in saying that, his fundamentals, his raw mechanics for the game are very good. So this is another player that, like, once again, he can get top 10 on the Korean server if he goes over there and plays the game. But is he going to have the nuanced, he's very much like I watch Chovy, I play the game like Chovy. Like, I don't adapt to the things that necessarily Chovy would adapt to make Chovy as good as what Chovy is. And I think that's experience, that's time. I know that he was really hotly touted with Innos, and then I sat down with Papa Smithy, and we were having just, a dinner at Worlds, and Papa Smithy said, I've got some crazy ideas, and I was like, go get Fofo. I actually said what you said.
Yeah, there you go.
Duncan was like, go get Fofo. I think he's like the best free agent that's going to come up. And he was like, what about this guy? And I was like, that was my idea. Like, thanks for stealing him. But I think, like, he could work out. I think he's going to be very similar to FBI, though. But the thing that makes me excited about Ryoma is the fact that he's got Someday to, like, 1v1 and, like, help learn off.
Amazing
and he's got Meteos. Like, if this guy, this will be the proof in the pudding to what I'm saying.
Yes.
Because I guarantee at the end of the season, people are still flaming FBI. And this is a top 4 team, like, minimum in my book. Like, if this team doesn't get top 4, I think it's a disappointment for Meteos, Cody, Someday. Then, like, I think that they will take this player and make him into a very good mid laner. Might not be the best, but he'll be very good.
I also heard as well that it wasn't just 100. It's not like Papa Smithy is literally so biased. He's like, I must have an OCE. But no, there was multiple teams I heard in NA looking at and potentially wanting this player. So it actually was one of those ones where, just as Loco pointed out when we first did the off-season episode, that what's changed now is people have finally understood what basically we always said, Loco, which is that you actually have to nail the best domestic talent, and then you add in, because the difference is, the difference between, like, the 7th best Korean mid laner, the best, might not be as big as the 7th best mid laner who's NA and the best NA mid laner. Like, in that scenario, you nail your imports. So what it meant, domestic rather. So what it meant was, domestically, the talent also got super, super valued in that sense. So when he's bringing in a player like Roman, that's actually a big statement at this point in time. Like, it's that what you're saying is, like, the rest of the team and the rest of the team is fucking banging as well.
And I got in a really heated conversation with, the people. We call them the great unwashed, the Twitter following, whatever they are. Yeah, the plebeians. And, like, I was just so amazed that people could try and judge this guy based off what Papa said in that interview. It was like, we brought him over. We duo-queued him with maybe the greatest North American jungler, Xmithy and Meteos, both definitely up there. We then had analysts look at him, and there was other teams interested. We think he's good, and everyone was like, he sucks. I'm like, how do you win with these people?
You can't win. No, you can't. You definitely can't win with those people.
What argument can you bring up in response to that is a very rigorous set of things that they went through to bring this player over.
So
Loco, do you actually know this player?
I don't know him at all, and I'm actually one of the doubters also. I'm not saying I'm not saying this guy.
It's not totally unfair. Yeah.
I'm not saying this guy can't succeed, but this guy has to be an outlier for him to succeed in North America. For long as the import rule stays true, he has to be as good as players like Jensen, Björk, or whatever Korean player pops up and comes over. That's the bar that this guy has to hit. And to come from OCE and to do it in North America, he has to be an outlier level of player.
Technically, he only has to be better than DeMonte and Golden Glue. But
what I'm thinking in my head, right, is so I'm a GM, and maybe this is going to be a really unpopular thing to say, but I'm expecting Cody, who's made Worlds 3 times on 3 different teams, he's going to want to get paid to come back to 100 Thieves. Meteos, who got booted off the team, he's going to want to get paid to come back to 100 Thieves. I assume Sunday
balance the budget somewhere,
Someone's got to cop it.
There you go.
And when I look at it, I think, this guy is probably,
the trade-off's worth it for
minimum, and he could be better than the domestic mid laners. So in my head, what I'm thinking is you get this guy for probably, I've heard on the grapevine that, somewhere between 200 and 300 is kind of the number that gets thrown around for mediocre talent within the LCS.
Yeah, that's true.
If you're getting this guy at a third of that rate, Loco, and he's better than them, and that means you can bring in Sunday, Meteos, Cody, that's a great way to build a team. Put your manager hat on for a second. Papa Smithy has just pulled off the greatest fucking heist ever. He doesn't need $1 million mid laner if he only has $100,000. He just needs the best $100,000 mid laner he can find, and that might be Ryoma.
So, Spawn, that's fine for now, but let's say 100 Thieves actually does work out, and they are a top 4 level. Going into next year, or going into summer, if they want to push for a championship, and there's an import mid available, and they have to make that upgrade. Unless Ryoma
you sit your playing group down and you say you either all come down 50 grand each and we go get a $300,000 mid laner, or you're stuck with them again. And that's what being a good boss is, Loco. I have to do it with my own team all the time. You can't have me on the show unless you're willing to halve your paycheck for it. That's just kind of how these things work.
Yeah, here's the thing. Remember, this is the difference between the coach and the GM. The GM's supposed to build to the future. So here's one of the problems. I'll just speculate here. I'm not saying this based on inside information. But if someone like Papa Smithy comes into 100 Thieves, yes, 100 Thieves has money, but nobody likes to join teams that will lose. And people last year saw that even with really big names, 100 Thieves was fucking losing. So believe it or not, if this guy even just works out, I'll use the old Paul Belter logic of just don't lose. Don't have to be the best, just don't lose. If he can just do that and allow the other people on the team who are really big name players to carry, don't know what happened with the bot lane, but the top side of the map's straight fire in theory. If he can allow those people to carry, and let's say they just go to Worlds, where you get to scrim Koreans, and guess what? That's the best advert you can give those guys to come join your team. It actually sets you up one step away from being able to get Chovy to come if he wants for 7 million or whatever the fuck it would be. That's when you could make the upgrade. So I know what you mean. It'd be nice if you could just go straight to that. But as a GM, I don't necessarily hate the move in that sense of trying to just get the team to another level, and then I'll make my next move.
And I look at the mids in the LCS, and I don't think this guy's the worst mid in the LCS. Just straight up, I will stake a lot of reputation on the fact that Ryoma is going to be better than someone like Golden Glue. And he seems to be, from what I can see, one of the only local mid laners on your list.
He's the local mid laner.
So there we go.
Loco, general thoughts on 100 Thieves?
So they are running back their 2018 roster, but I don't think they'll have anywhere near the same success because rest of the teams just got so much better. And the only player on 100 Thieves that I would say is better than they were in 2018 is Cody. I think Meteos someday, pretty much where they are, maybe a little bit worse. And I don't think Ryoma's worse than Ryu, but compared to the competition, Ryoma is worse than Ryu in terms of, how to put it, relative to the competition, Ryoma is worse in 2019 than Ryu is in 2018. So I think they're going to do worse, even though they're running back most of their roster.
The last little thing I'll say is Papa Smithy thinks about a league in the same way I think about a league, because I've spoken to Chris a lot about this. We're good mates in real life. We've worked together for the last 5 years. You don't build a roster to win week 1 of the LCS.
Yeah.
If you're doing that, you're an idiot. You build a roster to win week 24. And if he thinks that Ryoma does have upside, I'm one of those. Like, the other thing that I hate is, like, Papa Smithy was the best analytical commentator that existed in League of Legends.
That was his hype, yeah.
In my opinion. And so then he's watched this guy play, and it's like, it's not good enough for other people as well. Like, you can't say he's the best analytical, mind that gets to speak about the game, and then not trust him when he takes a punt like this. Papa knows what he's doing. You don't go get Meteor's Cody someday if you don't think you're going to make World. So you have to believe in the 24-week plan.
I'll give you another angle on this as well. I also do think that it is quite stupid to spend a lot of money, which you have to do to get any level of talent or big name now. It's very stupid to build a team which realistically will be sixth best. To spend a lot of money to do that is idiotic, because you won't make that team and be the sixth best and then go up. You've already bought the talent. They're known quantities. In that scenario, if you don't have the talent to compete for top 3, you should actually be going with the gambles that either one day you sell or they become the next stars, or you can just change. Like, that's why if people are already going to think you just flamed Golden Guardians, because they've only got fucking Closer as a potential, like, next big talent. Like, FBI was sort of saying maybe he can make it. Keith, let's be real, probably isn't ever going to be a top support player. Goldinger's not going to be a top mid. I can now say that with confidence. And Haunts is whoever he is, and actually he's a good player. So Golden Guardians didn't do what I just said on either angle. They just went for the whack, no man's land in between, actually, where they sort of got some known players, but they're not good ones, and they are going to come 10th, probably even spending more than they had to for 10th. So that's another thing I think is, like, because it basically in traditional American sports, this is absolutely the concept people now understand, is that you don't waste your time with, like, pretty good players in 6th place. What you have to do is, what do they say? Blow it up. You have to literally destroy the team to start from nothing and go potentially to the top, because odds that the 6th best team with small changes goes to first. I mean, I'd just say go and look at League of Legends history. When does it happen? Not very often. Not very often at all. So, okay, what about this?
Oh, wait. Can I ask one final question?
I want to know, like, what your actual, like, level for them is. Like, where should they be?
Well, can I ask one question, Spawn, before we go on that?
Yeah.
So, how is he in comparison to Pobelter? Because that's the big question, right? Like,
I think, like, they're two very different kinds of players. So I would be more comfortable, like, comparing Triple to Pobelter, because, like, in my opinion, they're both, like, very control style mid laners. Like, I look at Ryoma, like how people used to look at Bjerg when he first came over from Europe, or when people used to look at old Faker or Chovy or Showmaker. He's one of those players as opposed to a Pobelter. The thing I like about Pobelter is, like, he's very controlled. He's willing to take the map very, very slowly. If you've watched Ryoma even stream, he's like a 10-0 player or a 0-10 player.
Right.
So it's a very
more
hard...
like leader then in that sense from Europe, if anyone knows that player.
Yes, very much like that. So I think, like, that's why it's hard to make the comparison. But that's why I was looking at a player like Demonte, because when Demonte's on things like Kiana and stuff like that, that's what I actually think of Demonte as well. He's going to run around the map. He's always the person looking for the flank. He's going to, like, pop off and win you the game, which he was able to do in Gauntlet, or he's not going to be able to do that. And I think, that's how we should be treating him. Like Ryoma. If he just turns into a stock standard Orianna, Victor, Azir player, I'm going to be pretty disappointed.
By the way, actually, this is a question for you, Loco, but I'll make the statement. I want to get your insight from someone who's inside the scene. Imagine that person who's not in Fnatic and doesn't know anything about Fnatic now. People like Loco know more about the scene than you daft cunt. They're actually talking to people behind the scenes. So I'll just say this, right? Also, this is where I actually like the point he made earlier about, like, why Papa Smithy financially could have brought this player in. Because there's another consideration no one's giving. This isn't like picking teams in the schoolyard to play football, and I just take him or I take him, and then the choice is, why did you pick him over him? No, we don't know what the negotiation is like. Like, I'm going to go ahead and guess, right? This is a pure speculation. I actually think if you said to Paul Belter, I'll give you an LCS spot for the fucking minimum, I actually think he says no. I think he tries to, like, say, listen, I'll only, like, if I'm going to keep playing in my life, like, I put a lot of my years of my life into this game, it has to be, say, 400,000. Or, you know what? I'm a fucking champion. If you want me, I want to play for your team, but it has to be 600. I have to get paid for who I am. So the problem there is, it's not even really a fair comparison. It's something cheaper that only has to be even comparable. It can even be slightly worse, and it might be as good as the... Because obviously, listen, I'm with you, Loco. I'd take them on and Paul Belt. I know those players. To be fair, I don't know this player. I can't say that. But as a result, the fact I don't know him is why I would take this player. So do you think someone like Paul Belt, for example, would go to the minimum if he could just be in the league? What's your thoughts?
Probably, definitely not. Like, these are very proud players, and...
Yeah, just like we saw.
Yeah, I mean, you know why Dick started Johnson over Sneaky, right? They couldn't come to a number. There was a number that Sneaky wanted. Dick either could not match that number or they didn't want to do that number. So they're like, I guess we're going to go with a rookie. I guess we're just going to go with Johnson. And if 100 Thieves are being budget conscious, or if there is like a room that they're playing within, Ryoma is going to be way cheaper than someone like Pobelter.
And look, you guys are much closer to North American teams than what I'm going to be. I don't see their books. But if there is a business in the world that isn't running on some form of budget, they're irresponsible and they're ultimately probably bad for your league. Like, everyone should have a cap. Like,
so the thing is, like, that is how teams should run. But they have infinite budget due to the investment. So sometimes, like, the GMs and the coaches...
if you have infinite investment, you don't have infinite budget. Like, they're two different things, right? Like, you have to be able to build a facility. You can't take money from your facility and be like, you know what, I'm not going to put this door in because I want to get all these players. Like, that's not how real life works. And I see this thrown around so often. Like, I just struggle to see, like, if you've got that much money, I hope you're a good businessman. I struggle to see a good businessman writing a check for $100 million for one of these teams, says, I'm going to buy this team, go run it into the ground in a year. Go get me $100 million worth of players. Because I don't think that's how it works. I would assume that they get given a reasonable budget.
I think what you're saying is very reasonable and very logical, but in North America, due to the amount of investment that people have gotten and due to the amount of like some of the crazy stuff that people are being able to sell to investors, they're like, if we get this player, like we're gonna go to Worlds. Like if we do get this player, like it's gonna really complete our team. Like they go over the budget and they do stupid shit like that all the time.
Mate, if Worlds is that important, come to OCE. Just bring 2 Koreans with you. You'll probably make it.
Yeah.
Also, I'll give you a counterpoint to that, Loco. Even though I agree generally, like there's a lot of teams, like some of the newer ones even coming in now, have again been spending like an absolute fucking disgrace, which is why I hate new teams coming in. I will say this. Of the squads out there, first of all, 100 Thieves already got burned trying to make all-star rosters and spend a lot of money. But then secondly, if you look at other aspects going on in the wider esports world, they didn't choose to be in the CWL for Call of Duty when literally they should be like an obvious like legacy brand to bring into the game. They're in Counter-Strike, even though the team they got is very good, and still in the modern day you'd have to pay a lot, it's not the same as getting like EG's lineup, for example, which probably costs more if I had to guess. So even then, and then finally they don't have an Overwatch League team. So as far as I know, listen, yeah, they'll spend money, but I don't actually feel like 100 Thieves is spending money willy-nilly, actually. I feel like there has to be a logic. So I would imagine that team literally gave Papa Smithy, this is your budget. And maybe if it was Chovy or something, he could have said, right, can we have another $1 million for that? But if it's just normal players, he probably has to work within that budget, which, by the way, is also kind of what you sign up for as a GM. It's like, well, I'm going to choose to spend part here and not as much here.
Yeah. And I can tell you from knowing Chris as well that he is a pretty conservative guy. So he would have been given that budget and he would have built himself some fat in case something explodes on this roster. Because the last thing you want to have to do is bench a player and then go back to your board and say, oh, by the way, this player's exploded that I put my reputation on and I don't have money to replace him. I've been in situations like that before with injured players and stuff like that. So I think, like, you know, Papa's a savvy business guy. He's not a dumbass. He's negotiated his own contracts as a freelancer and done very well for a long time. He understands how the systems work. And I think that this is a calculated punt or gamble or whatever you want to call it, to be able to get himself, you know, that kind of leeway that he needs to be able to. And I think that he's chosen an appropriate player to do it. Maybe not the best player because I don't watch every minor region, but I think he's picked a good one to be able to go to. Primary language, English, you know, top 10 solo queue in Korea. You know, I think it lines up with kind of my way of thinking about it.
I'll give you another angle as well that people don't think about if you're coming from the world of the GM. This is why that whole topic of like NA doesn't develop talent. It's not trying to. They're trying to be the best in NA, then go to Worlds and win. That's the point of the competition. And to make money along the way, obviously. It isn't about winning with an NA player. Like, that's just a bonus. So as a result, one of the ways you also know Academy is not about building up NA talent is essentially you're actually disincentivized against trying on pure rookies into NA Academy. Because think of this. You know how in the NFL, if you have a complete bomb, Loco, as your backup quarterback, your season's fucking over if your quarterback goes down. It's just, you can't possibly win. Whereas certain teams, the New Orleans Saints, this year would be a great example. They actually had someone half decent waiting there who came in and won a bunch of games for them. In the same sense, if I was someone who had a big name team in the LCS and I've already spent some money, I would still save a little bit of my money and try and convince Golden Glue to be my mid lane academy mid laner. Because then you know what? If my mid laner goes down, we're not going to win with Golden Glue, but the season isn't over. Like, we can still scrape through to a playoffs. So, like, he's actually got tenure in a way that the rookie who I'd be bringing him wouldn't, you know. So there's an angle that, unfortunately, again, disincentivized. This is why it's very interesting as a lesson. I want everyone to think about this going forwards. in all systems that you apply regulations to, regulations nearly always benefit the biggest organizations, the big teams. It just helps them even more. It doesn't help the little guy. The import rule sounds like it helps the little guy. It doesn't. It just helps the best NA talent. Does it help the best NA teams get the new rookies? No, but it helps them stay ahead of the others in terms of they have the best import. Actually, that's the weird thing about how regulations are often done, because unfortunately, the reason they're done, think about it, in a world of franchising, you want the teams to be happy who are in LCS. You don't care about the team in fucking some other region. You want the LCS teams to be the most happy. That's why the only problem here is people are taking the surface level platitudes of like, let's all be great and let's build up all the great players in America. That's just shit. That's marketing. Okay, that isn't real. No one really believes that. If they did, their actions would show otherwise. And I actually believe the way the league's structured, almost every angle that I'd implement to bring through the next NA talent is almost like goes against the way the system's designed to work and would actually make me probably have a shit team, unfortunately. Just a quick rant there. Right, let's do another team then.
Let's do TSM Academies because they have lost. He's actually been my favorite OCE import. I have
one question for you. We didn't talk about this before. Like, I only remember seeing a few games of that stunt guy who's now replacing Afro.
Yeah.
Like, are you someone who hypes him? Is he a player in your mind?
Damn fucking good. So I know people might say I'm biased because I actually played in Twitch Rivals with him. But Stunt is someone that's always been like mechanically really insane as a support player. Like he's a solo queue support player. He's not someone that's like very picky and he's like, oh, I always want a duo. He's a solo queue support player that has always done well for himself. He's had like a few mental issues. He's not crazy, but like mentally, like on stage, like mentally being part of a team. Like he's not like psycho. It's
mentality,
just,
maybe.
Yeah, mentality, not mental issues. Yeah, mentality issues. And 100T's must feel confident in terms of starting him over Afro. I know Afro and Cody had the drama before, so maybe that's why they're starting Stunt. But Stunt has like my full backing, and I can't wait to see him in LCS.
But once again, Papa's not a dumbass. He's like, who do you play around apart from your AD carry the most on the map as a support? Your jungler. Go get him a stable jungler that's done it before. Like, don't get, Dardoch and Stunt to play together. That probably is going to blow up in your face. But there's no reason that this shouldn't be, one of those things that a player can learn from. And that's why I actually respect Papa a lot when I look at this roster, because he has taken, a lot of gambles, I think, in areas, but he probably does need a gamble on those areas if he wants to be a top 3 team. Because I don't think doing the bog standard, like go get Afro, go get DeMonte, put it on this team. Are they better than TL? No. So you may as well take a small calculated risk on some of these lesser known quantities that he feels like he would probably have more insight than other people.
Yeah, for sure. Vilma seems like a crazy risk to me that knows nothing about him. But as we talked about, Papa's someone that's extremely smart, and he knows a lot more about Vilma than pretty much anyone, I'd imagine. So him taking this risk is a very, very informed risk.
By the way, just to refresh my memory, who was the middle laner of Cloud9?
Cloud9, Niski.
Oh, it's still Niski. I guess they just haven't officially signed him. That's why he's not listed on the page here when I'm looking. Right, okay. I would say this. Listen, the Rioma angle's a big gamble. Like, Stunt, from some of the games I saw, he had potential. I'm not quite sure how to go. But then again, I actually think Cody's son, from what I've heard, this is what's weird, is people should lean into the double if comparison. And as much as from what I hear about Cody's son, he's a bit difficult. He's got mad skills if you get him in a team fight and he thinks he knows best. You know what? I actually fucking love players like that. As long as they then don't like skip out on work ethic and stuff like that. Like, basically, if you read my Dardoch article, you'll see the distinction I make between like difficult players and players who are actually arseholes. So I actually like Cody's son. I think him getting cut from under the Thieves was the best thing that happened to him. It made him literally have to level his game up again and stop a load of the shit he did before. Like, I don't see the same ints from him when he was playing in Clutch.
Oh, well, not just like the ints from him, but also mentality-wise, Cody was not the best player in terms of like what he viewed himself as, like what he deserves. Like he was very entitled, and then him getting cut from 100T's and then going to Clutch and going to like Clutch Academy and then slowly working his way up and then now joining 100T's. Like I think he's gonna be in a way better place.
Like, I actually think this roster, I have to take into account the gambles, obviously. I think this roster has very good, big potential in this region. Like, I told people on the EU episode, even though some people did some upgrades, I actually think generally, I think the field's a bit whack in LCS. Like, I don't look at many of these teams. I think if you send any of these teams to Worlds, they're doing much. I think Team Liquid's one of the only ones. Beyond that, I'm not certain about any other team. I think there's a lot of whack lineups here. So actually, in that world, this team can absolutely contend for Worlds. And who even knows, if things go amazingly, the title. Like, that's not off the table completely. I know Team Liquid in theory should be so dominant, it shouldn't matter. But you know what? I have faith in Broxer. What did I say? Oh, yeah, I said it, motherfucker. I didn't stutter.
I have them like 4th at the moment. Like when I power rank these teams quickly, like knowing
Seems
the limited stuff I know of the LCS, I power rank them as 4th.
Yeah.
But this way, I don't think it's outrageous that they can be at the same level at Cloud9.
Also, what do you think about like Tony as well as a coach, Loco? Because like that was my last thing about this roster that gave me more faith in it. Because like from everything I've heard about Tony, I've had like conversations with people around him, never to him. Like he seems like he's a pretty switched on guy.
So I have never worked with Tony, but I've talked to a lot of people that work with Tony. Most importantly, like some of the TSM people that work directly with Tony. Like Tony's a damn good coach in terms of like running a system and making players feel comfortable in terms of like what's coming next. Like he's very, very structured. And from talking to some of the 100T's staff, like Tony seems like a great fit and he has like a structure on where he wants to take the team. Like his weakness is he trusts in players way too much and he doesn't know when to let go. Like we saw it with like the Huhi situation. We saw it with like the Darshan situation. Like Papa needs to play like a really critical role in terms of roster management, but if Papa does that, I think Papa and Tony will work really well together.
His job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be on him. Oh, by the way, I've got a question for you, Loco. Did Zix jump or was he pushed? You know what I'm saying, motherfucker.
I think it was a little bit of both, right? Like Tony didn't want to be there and it seemed like Peter was the head coach. Like funny enough, like I was watching.
That makes a lot of sense. If Peter Zhang was the coach of the fucking summer split, now everything makes perfect sense to me. I'm not one of those people who thinks that guy's awesome.
Like where I felt like things were really weird was for TSM going into summer when TSM started doing 6-man. I was like, this isn't Tony. Tony does not like doing 6-man. And later we learned in Parth's statement, Parth wanted to try out Grig. And I'm guessing Tony probably wanted to stay as a 5. So he probably started to lose power more and more as summer went on. And at the end of the year, like it was kind of obvious, like I'm no longer the head coach. I'm not doing head coach things. Like I should look for a different job.
Okay, because that's obviously one angle I wondered about. Because if he was actually straight fired because they thought he wasn't good enough, which by the way is vaguely implied with what Loco was saying there, like why do you let someone else take control and sort of intrude on your area? Because remember, Reggie's even said it in an interview with me like 2 years ago or something. His plan in the future was really to pull back and not to be involved and to let these guys succeed or fail on their own. But first of all, they didn't do that. So I would say, I don't think that's the greatest advert for Zix, because I personally thought when Zix got the lineup that he had in TSM, I know it wasn't ideal with the jungle. I definitely can give you something of a pass for that. At the same time, though, some of the talent that he had, I feel like that's where, as a coach, you again show to people like I'm one of the best coaches. Because I mean, he did in a sense that they made the spring split. Obviously, I think they overperformed, but I don't know. It feels like a mixed bag on that one. So one thing I'll say looks very positive about this team now is an area I always was concerned about Zix going into TSM is I don't feel as though as a person he has like the general's mentality where he can control and command a room but like respect in that way. I feel as though he's like the nerd guy where the idea is if you believe that he knows better than you and he knows the shit, then you listen to him and you're like, right, he knows what he's talking about. So in this team, I actually feel like there's enough people where hopefully there shouldn't be too many clashes of personality and these sorts of things. Like I actually think the big egos are in the right spots in this team and should basically be allowed to be the big egos, you know.
One thing I can speak on is his personality. He is somewhat of a nerd. Like he loves League of Legends and that's his life, but he is charismatic. Like when you hang with Tony, like he's funny, he knows how to like talk, he knows how to control the room, so he knows how to lead players. That's something I believe he's going to be able to do. Right, and he also one last thing, he also knows his place. Sometimes a coach has to be like the loudest voice in the room and has to be the smartest person. Tony is not that person, so working with players like Meteos, working with players like Someday, he'll be fine. Like he knows how to work with veterans too.
Right. I know we did some of the teams before, so the problem is I can't remember all of them. So
we
did Team Liquid. I don't think we did TSM though.
We didn't do TSM.
Should we do TSM now then?
Sure. Before we go into the TSM main academy, our main team, I want to kind of talk about TSM Academy with Spawn. What's your point of view on Lost? I like him. I like him in terms of mechanics, but kind of like the FBI situation. Like he's like a cannon. Like you have to point him in the right way. It seems like he's lost a lot. It seems like he gets caught out a lot. Like for someone with such good mechanics, I see him make such dumb decisions sometimes.
I mean, yeah, absolutely agree. He's the exact same player as FBI. We wanted to get Lost, and then when we didn't get Lost, we got FBI for that exact reason. They were both picked up through the Enero system. You know, Lost was the first import that Enero bought, then they bought FBI on board. Like, he's FBI 2.0 or FBI is Lost 2.0. They're the same player.
Okay. By the way, Loco, I know that was purely just a coincidence, but it made you sound like an idiot when you were like, "Thing about Lost is sometimes he's lost." I'd say he's lost all the time. That's the thing. That's his name. But yeah, just use a different word. And by the way, a little piece of info. There's a little gem for you.
It's 4 a.m.
When
for
I
me.
did my article on Dardoch, a trick with doing articles I learned over the years. I used to just be like everyone else, just shove a picture of a guy here, and then his team here, and go, "Oh, he's really winning championship," and go, "Right, the article's done." Because I was focused on the writing. But one of the things I learned in kind of a cinematic sense is you want to set the atmosphere with the pictures. You want the pictures to sort of, in some way, even though they don't, because it's just a picture
I saw you use the picture of me.
No, I did that obviously. But at the end, this is what no one noticed. At the very end of the article, I had a picture with Dardoch with his back turned to us. That's all sort of evocative of some of his problems within teams, closing himself off. He's walking away into the distance, possibly his last chance we'll see him. And next to him is the player Lost. And on the back of their jerseys, it says Lost Dardoch. And Dardoch will always be lost. So you have to understand. I'm like fucking Tarantino up in this motherfucker or some shit. Oh my God.
I did like your writing.
The layers. The layers. By the way, actually, let me get your take on that, because obviously we're going to talk about TSM now. Let's start with that angle, the Dardoch angle, right? Because obviously this is a player where you absolutely have said in the past, like, it's not about skill. You've always said he's a very good player, but like you just don't think he should be on TSM. Like he doesn't have the personality for it. Now, essentially, my article corroborates that. Like what people won't understand is when I said Dardoch should be on TSM, I meant as in, for exactly the reason I told you. I think he's basically the best way to stress test whether they break junglers or not, because they're not going to break him. So as a result, if it doesn't work with him, it's probably time to, yes, move on from him, but also update the system, like fix whatever the problem in the circuit is, right? I've never thought he really should be on TSM in as much as like his personality deserves it and stuff. Like I could totally get why players would be like, if I can get somebody even vaguely as good, fuck this guy. Because as I say in my article, this isn't stories from years ago. This isn't that it was when he was 18 that he was.
It was
like
from
this.
Optic.
Some of this even comes into Optic. And people say, like, why didn't you include Echo Fox? The article's about the times he was bad. It wasn't his fucking career story. Get through your head, you idiots. So anyway, and by the way, the stories I could tell from that one. But you know what? Not all my stories are corroborated, so they don't go in the article. I often say when we say a wild speculation here, sometimes that's something informed by something we know behind the scenes, but we're not willing to say it as from a particular person because it isn't corroborated. It is just a rumor. So it's like an idea, like a theory, right? But put it this way, everything I put in that article, and this is what I want to ask Loco's opinion on, even though people are going to say you're going to back me up and be biased, even though we fucking fight like cats and dogs on the show all the time and call each other constantly, try and ruin each other's reps. But let's be real, right? When I said in that article, I literally had lots of former teammates, recent teammates and staff. I even tried to imply, but I was very careful because I do not want people bringing up those stupid rumors about him from the past. But I even implied people outside of the game I have connections with, which is very, very rare. I never normally get that outside the game because I don't even go looking for that. What did you think of the general gist of the article? The idea that he's got this chance in TSM, but it's not like he earned it by being reformed entirely.
He earned it by TSM kind of like not being able to get the junglers they needed to get. They weren't able to get Svenskeren, they weren't able to get Xmithty, and like they failed with Acadian, they failed with Skrig, they failed with Spica.
If I had to guess, Loco, I'm guessing you heard some of these stories, and that's what informed you thinking teams probably shouldn't pick this guy necessarily up.
So I heard things about Josh getting better, but Optic Academy, like Josh also kind of trolled in certain regards, and he didn't take Academy very seriously. Like we talked about attitude earlier with Spawn, right? Like Korean imports feeling like, oh, they should be happy I'm here. I'm kind of gonna guess that's how Dardoch felt on Optic Academy. Like team should be happy I'm here. Like it's a criminal. It's criminal that I'm not playing in LCS right now. So. Man, I really want to see Josh succeed, but statistically, like, this just does not look good. I think TSM's on their 9th jungler in their history, and Dardoch's on his 6th team. Like, this is the most replaced position in TSM, and this is the jungler that can't keep a team together. So many things have to change, and Josh has to respect Bjergsen really, really well, and, like, Josh has to also... I don't know, I want to say this is going to work, but... it's going to be hard, right? Bjergsen is the player Dardoch respects the most, and that changes him. This is his last chance.
People don't get this. I'm obviously a massive fan of Dardoch's game in the server. I want him to be I want him to be the best NA jungler, and then one day be like the super team jungler on Team Liquid and go fucking potentially win worlds. Like, the key thing that I made this point of years ago, and this is where me and Kelsey disagreed when she made her article, where her premise of her article was that if someone like Dardoch's toxic enough, actually even people like Mike Young are a better offer. Now, I didn't think so, because the difference is I never thought Mike Young could be what Dardoch was in the game. If it had been all things are equal and one guy's talking, yeah, I get that. I would agree with that. But the point I actually thought she went too far with making that point, though, is that I think Dardoch is literally like almost a prodigy at League of Legends, for at least for an NA player. So I really do believe if NA ever wants to win Worlds, it needs to have like a Dardoch at jungle. It probably needs to have, I mean, it wouldn't work now, but in the past, an Afromu or someone at support. And then the idea is probably some imports, then probably Doublelift as the AD carry, and then let's say it'd have to be, like I said, in the future, Steve has to finally get someone to say yes to one of those calls where he brings in the Shy and Chovy, and all of a sudden that's your team. Think of that team already. Why couldn't that team go on a crazy run and win a Worlds? Of course it could. That's not even ridiculous. So I want this guy to succeed. The problem and the point of that article, and if anyone didn't get this, at least 25% of the article was essentially written to Dardoch. It was a way of saying, listen, motherfucker, stop saying these lies about who you are and what you've done. I know who you are. I've investigated who you are, and I'm going to put it out to the world as a challenge to you. So that I even end the article by saying, prove it with actions, not words, Dardoch. I say that at the end of the article because I think that's the only way some of these people, like, by the way, it's the way they are. So I actually think some of those people, or in the short term, only respect that approach. Like, you have to be someone who can say to them, you're fucking up, in a way that everyone else, well, can we get through to him? And would you listen to me in this way? Like, I don't think that gets through to some people. So I wanted the sharp shock of, like, now everyone knows. So it's either you let that continue and that rep will follow you, or you go to and be the best.
I just hope that someone on this team has a close relationship with Dardoch, because, like, a couple of things that people don't seem to understand, like, past performance is the best indicator of future performance. Like, if you've done something over and over again, like, odds are you're going to do it again. And generally the only way you break that cycle is if you are emotionally, like, aligned with someone as well. So you need to, like, trust the people you're around to, like, also be able, because, like, to expect he's just going to become an angel is unrealistic. He's going to fuck up. And the people at TSM or wherever are going to need to be as invested in Dardoch and the person, Josh, and, like, trying to help him get better at this thing. And the problem is, and, like, I don't know anyone within TSM, so this is just a shot in the dark, right? But their past performance and Dardoch's past performance don't align in the middle of a better jungler in this situation, which is why I don't see that there is a way that this is going to work out. But I personally, as a GM, love to take on tasks like a Dardoch. I think they're the most fulfilling things in the world, because when you do turn it around, you have, like, made a better player, a better person, and, like, a better, like, teammate. Like, you've actually done some good within your role as a manager. So, like, I hope it works. Like, I'm all in on the story as well, but I just think that this is one of those things that you got to go in, like, a little bit shielded as a GM, because this is one of those ones that could break your heart as well if it doesn't work out.
Like you said there, and I've even said this, by the way, face to face with some of the people who were fucking, like, the owners of teams that Dardoch was on. I even said it in the article. The craziest thing is this: when I would big up his skills, I'd have the owners and people in the management of his teams like, stop fucking saying that. Do you know what this guy was like when he was at my team? You know what he did in this way? You know what he did to this coach? And I said, yeah, because essentially, mate, I'm not talking about on your team. I'm talking about if I was his coach. Like, I'd love to take a player like that, because as you're saying there, it's not even then just about competitive experience. You're trying to unlock the potential of someone who is fucking incredible, but guess what? They're the ones holding themselves back. So on the one level, it's actually the easiest thing to fix. Like, he can fix it tomorrow and start being a really sick player and unlock all the potential he had, like Doublelift did, like many of them did in the league. The problem is, it's also the hardest thing to unlock, because you have to get them to work with you. It's psychological. But imagine how rewarding it is when you see those players. Like, when you see Forgive and Go top 4 at Worlds, and you see Doublelift win all the NA championship. Like, it's not like you're doing it just to fuck with other people. It's like, it's so satisfying to see these people unlock their actual ability.
So one thing Spawn said regarding Dardoch and, like, him having an emotional connection to someone. So Parse mentioned it in the interview. They have a psychologist, and they feel like they're well suited to take on Dardoch. I mean, a lot of teams have sports psychologists, and they weren't able to do it. And then the other thing he mentioned was, so Peter, their new head coach, Peter Zhang, worked briefly with Dardoch when Dardoch was on TL Academy before. So, and Peter's someone that's very much a player's coach, and he's someone that really believes in players and works really well with junglers. He worked incredibly well with Acadian and gave Acadian a lot of confidence, so he could be the kind of player he was in Spring. And that's kind of their bet. Like, Peter knows how to work with jungle. Peter is someone that really talks to players and understands players and gets the best out of them. And we also have a sports site that can work with it. So it's not that TSM is completely, like, Dardoch, a shot in the dark, we're just going to make it work. Like, they have it prepped, so we just kind of have to wait and see.
Fingers crossed then.
Right, that's an angle we have to discuss, though. In some of the teams, the lineup's more interesting. I think that is an incredibly big statement that people have missed this season. Everyone's looking at the lineup at TSM and going, hey, I can see ways that could work and it could be good. Nobody's talking about the fact that TSM, a team historically who no one knows what the coaching situation is going to be. In the past, they've been criticised for not having good enough coaches, or why didn't they bring in Korean coaches? Used to be the refrain before they tried it with Song, etc., and it was kind of shit. Right, Loco, I know this hasn't been officially announced yet, so we still can't say it, but is it basically behind the scenes, is it almost a done deal that the person that we think is going to be the coach is going to be the real coach, or is it Peter's going to be the coach?
Peter's the coach.
What's the rumour?
They announced Peter as head coach.
So basically the guy that everyone heard in the offseason, that was just a rumour, it didn't
So
happen.
Om thing, so they reached out to China to find coaches, right? It was never going to happen. Om's getting paid somewhere around 600, 700 post-tax in China, and he has a wife, and like they have a life there. Like I don't even know why that rumor was ever a thing. Like they reached out, yes, like there were talks, but it just could not happen. Like the numbers would not have made sense.
Also, here's the thing, right? I know I just went to an event in China, but I've changed my mind on that shit. I'm probably never going again. So I'm never going back, so I can say this. I'm not going to go and give the full details, but all I'll tell you is this. If you make a lot of money in China, you should probably stay in China. Like, there's reasons why you wouldn't leave and why that wouldn't be the greatest scenario. I won't say any more, because what's good is everyone in the industry knows what I'm talking about, but the public won't get enough from that. But put it this way, just remember what I just said. If the person made a lot of money in China, don't think they're going to move to North America afterwards. Like, that's just not going to happen. So I can't tell you why. Maybe I've dropped that as a bomb in a few more years. I'll just say, just take that into consideration, because it is a real thing that's like basically, it's almost a fact at this point in time. Yeah. So that's another reason why I totally get why the imps of the world and the OMs, they're just going to stay there as long as they want.
Yeah.
Fair play.
So what's your take on Peter? I'm very curious.
Well, here's my problem. I obviously don't follow Academy, so I don't know what he's done in the last 3 or 4 years. But if you remember, a couple of details. One, everyone forgets this. The reason Peter Zhang is in America is because he came when the LMQ project came. He was their coach. I'm right on that, Loco?
Yeah.
Yeah, he came over with them, an all-Chinese team before the import rule, who not only made it to 3rd place and went to Worlds, but people forget this. People like Loco never bring it up, believe it or not. They were actually in a fucking series against TSM where they went to Game 5. If they win that game, your boy Thorin would have been right. All the bets would have gone his way. And I actually thought at the time that was the most competitive split ever. Like, I actually personally thought, like, Cloud9, them, even if they weren't in bad form, CLG and Dignitas, all these teams had qualities that meant they could have won the split. It was a crazy competitive split. Hence why TSM's matches were 3-2, 3-2, and then hence why it was 3-2 between Curse and LMQ. Like, there's a reason why those games were all close. Well, this is one of my problems. His next coaching gig, when most of those players went back to China to smash up PCs or whatever the fuck they were doing over there, and a lot of other things fucking apparently, stick to cyborgs, mate, not people. So one of the other things, Master references Straight Fire, but anyway, then one of the things he did that people forget is he became the coach of Team Liquid. And so in Season 5, I think it was Season 5, let me, off the top of my head, let me think. It must be Season 5 because they had Piglet. In Season 5, he was the coach of the Team Liquid that everyone forgets. When everyone says now, finally, they've got a championship roster, it's like, you don't know what you're talking about. I think it was the summer split of that year. No, fuck. I think it was summer was the one where they were first in the regular season.
Yep, they were summer and first.
They had sort of a super team. Not really. More a super team in the sense that everyone was really good at their position. They had Quaz, and they had fucking Dom when he was still very good. And then they had Phoenix when he was actually at his peak in terms... I mean, obviously, Azir was out at the time. Yeah, what the fuck you know about that? And then in the bottom lane, they had Piglet, and I think at the time... it was special, right?
Yeah.
So they had this roster that was really good. And the big problem this team had... You know what? Even if they shouldn't have won LCS, because I do believe like clutch is a thing, like Spawn said, being able to play playoffs is a different game. If you just looked at their level, they could beat anyone in the league. And in fact, I do think, even though they maybe, I don't know whether they should have won LCS, they should have at least been in the final, though, in my opinion, and they should have qualified for Worlds. Like, that's what the level of quality they had. The problem is, when I talked to people, some of the people in that team, they're welcome to say so on their own shows, and I asked around, they basically sort of told me that, like, the Peter guy wasn't that good a coach, basically. And the big problem was this. Because he came from LMQ and an all-Chinese team, that was the era when China, I'm going to say this as a joke now, because FPX won Worlds, but the rest of the teams still do this, they team fight all the time. Now, that's great for NA. You know what? In NA, that's brilliant. The problem is when you have the players he had, you don't need to gamble on the team fights. Like, if you have Quaz and Phoenix and these players and a Mega Jungle, you can split push. You can do all sorts of things. There's a million variants even back then, 4 years ago. So my problem is this. I actually felt like they matched him with the wrong team. I think that they needed at the time with that Team Liquid lineup, like a macro coach. They needed someone who would bring out those elements and use the strengths of the team and the lanes that you were always winning, by the way, to destroy the map and win the game. Like, if they'd have had the mentality of a Cloud9 type, they would have been the best. So my problem is this. I don't know what he's done in the meantime. And in fact, I was one of the people who said he should be fired as a Team Liquid coach. So if he's grinded back, that's cool. But I don't know who he is as a coach at the moment. Like, has he leveled up his coaching game a lot?
So one small correction, now that I remember, Peter used to study, I think, in San Fran. I think he got into esports through LMQ, but he didn't come to NA through...
fair enough. I just meant in terms of page and LCS and that. Okay, fair enough.
So small detail. What to say on Peter? It seems like his coaching has gotten better. Like, Peter's someone that's extremely young. I think he's like 21, 22 now.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, he's someone
pretty young, then.
He's someone like that's very, very young and someone that also kind of has like a...
Holy shit, he is.
Yeah. He has like a foot in the mouth he has a foot in the mouth problem where he just speaks, and sometimes as a coach, like, you just need to shut up.
Fucking ridiculous. You're so ridiculous.
I know.
So keep going. You're so ridiculous.
What? It's ridiculous because I have the same problem, right?
Yeah. So just admit that. Just say that as a caveat at the beginning, like
And Lustboy made the comparison that we're very much like similar people. Like, there's a certain...
And then you were like, "You fucking racist, Lustboy. He's Chinese and I'm Korean. You fucking bigot. Why don't you learn the difference?" And then Lustboy went out because he's only a fucking meme of a human being. Apparently, keep going.
I will say, like, Peter is a lot less cynical than me, and he believes in people a lot more than me. So maybe he is like the best player for Dardoch, our best coach for Dardoch, but he didn't work very well with Phoenix or Piglet. So Dom loved Peter back in Team Liquid. Dom's like, oh my god, Peter was an amazing coach for me. Like, Peter taught me so much. Peter got the most out of me. Phoenix and Piglet are like, we never had a coach. Like, fuck Peter. Like, Peter never did anything for us. So Dardoch is toxic like Phoenix and Piglet, and Dardoch shares a lot of personality traits of Phoenix and Piglet, but he's also a jungler who Peter has historically worked really well with. Like, Spica, their academy jungler, like, he was wanted by so many teams, but he chose TSM specifically because they had Peter, and he worked with Peter back on Echo Fox. So there's a lot of contrasting factors. Like, maybe Peter's the one that can unlock Dardoch. I don't know. Like, I'm way too biased because I know way too many people on TSM. I like Peter. Okay. I like Lustboy. I like Parth. I like Dardoch. So I'm only probably going to try to say positive things, but looking at it realistically, there's so many things that go against it too.
So I'll say a couple of things here. And obviously, I was primary League of Legends, and now since I've become a GM, I've had to like look at this whole wide world of esports that apparently existed before League did, and I wanted to be ignorant to it too as well, Twitch chat, so don't worry about it. But from what you've described an absolute coaching nightmare. If he's young, is like very quick to make comments, or like, you know, as you said, puts his foot in his mouth a couple of times, and he like is kind of cliquey, because that's what I heard, right? He has some players that don't like him and some players that love him. That's kind of cliquey, not university admired. That is a recipe for disaster on any team, let alone a team that has a long-standing player on it. And so I can speak from personal experience here, and this is why StarCraft coaches come into League of Legends. This is why I actually think that a Counter-Strike or some other coach could come into League of Legends and actually be a top coach. Like, if you brought Zonic over and taught him the game, I guarantee he could lead players.
I'd hire him tomorrow over half these people.
Yeah, exactly right. So what I'm trying to describe here, and I'm going to get flamed for this so hard, right, is if you're not older than someone, if you can't manage the person, if you can't actually get people aligned, if you can't bring 5 people to unity, you're not actually a coach. You're an analyst. If you can go to one guy and explain how to play your role and give him good insight, that's an analyst's job. A coach's job is to lead the team. And that does not sound like what you just described. And as a 21-year-old, I doubt whether you can actually coach 25-year-olds. I doubt that human beings are actually that malleable. Like, I wish they were, but to be good at something to this level, you have to have an ego. You hope it is healthy, but that's when seniority comes in. And that's where, as a 29-year-old, I can say to a 25-year-old that's better than me at the game, sure, you know, you're a challenger, and sure, I'm taking your ideas into account, but the way this team needs to play is not centered necessarily around your strengths. if you can't do that and you can't make that player understand it, the team's fucking gone. They've run away with you already. Like, if you can't align that, it's a lost cause.
Come on, Loco. You can speak to being a young guy. You don't know, am I friends with the player? Do I respect? It's hard, right?
I mean, age isn't everything, but age is a lot. And Peter's also, he shares a lot of same traits as me, and he made a lot of the same mistakes as me. Maybe he can be wiser. Maybe people around him can help him. Maybe Pars, maybe the sports site can help him. But yeah, like, I want to be all in on TSM, but it is hard.
I'm going to be the hater. You ready? Fuck them guys hating him. How about they do their jobs and he does his job? And even if he's not good enough, why the fuck's he a coach of one of the top teams in all of North America and the West? Like that, I've said this before. If you are TSM, you don't sign players like Greg. You sign fucking Smithy. What don't you get about the way sports works? Like, this isn't the way, even in traditional sports where people are going to go about, oh, they signed a rookie. Those are sports with salary caps where you literally have to gamble on positions. And we're doing the scenario we talked about with the 100 Thieves and is this guy worth less, but it's a gamble. Like, if you're really TSM, there shouldn't be any if and buts. It should be like, we signed Peter Zhang because we believe he is the best coach in the West. We believe he is the guy who is going to win worlds. He is going to win championship. That's why you sign him.
Thorin, I want to get your opinion on this, right? Because I can just already see the tweets coming in. You live through like 1.6 to like source to go. What I just described, does that actually exist in esports?
What does what?
Like the fact that, as players get older, as they learn the soft skills that are involved in coaching as opposed to just the hard, like, this is the way you play the game.
Oh, yes. Basically, as you said, it wasn't even a diss when you said they were an analyst. What you meant is that guy might just be the best analyst. The problem is you're putting him in a role where his responsibilities are coaching. Coaching isn't analysis. Coaching isn't X's and O's. What people might not even get is this. Even some head NFL coaches aren't the X's and O's guy. That's the offensive coordinator. Yeah. But he picks which of the X's and O's strategies you should use. The point is, he uses his decision-making. That's the coach. And then part of decision-making is, which player do I talk to in a certain way? Which player do I discipline harsher than the others? Which player do I give a chance to and I don't give a second chance to someone else? And what's the best thing that improves decision-making? Experience, because the way you get good experience is through having bad experience. You make the wrong decisions and it helps you hopefully grow and learn what the right ones are. So here's the thing. One area that Peter has a big advantage in is for his age, he's actually ahead of where Loco was. He's got years of coaching in LCS. So that could potentially have helped him make a lot of the mistakes and get to that level. The problem is, I mean, this is just going off vague things that Loco said. If really he does like be a bit cliquish or be friends with the players, that's the young man's mistake. That's what you don't do. Like, that's what an older person wouldn't do. Like, I guarantee you, when Papa Smithy talks to these players, he's not their best pal. He understands that, like, hey, I'd like to have a good relationship with you as your boss. And let's always understand that that's the way it is. And that's just something you have to do. And so that's where I do have a concern. Is like, whenever someone's young like that, whenever someone's a little bit, like, actually, as soon as you said it, I know you're not saying it as like a harsh comment, Loco, but if someone who kind of puts their foot in their mouth, a coach, the wrong word from a coach can destroy a player. Like, think of Dardoch himself. I've seen Dardoch did this. You would say something, right? And you'd gotten past this issue. But Dardoch stores it in his mind when you said that or when you made that mistake. Mm-hmm. And half those fucking sessions look like me roasting you on this show. Like, you would say something totally reasonable, like, as a group, we should do this. And he'd be like, but Loco, 3 years ago, you didn't do that when you were met. Fucking hell. It's like that can't be the way it operates. It cannot. You cannot have that kind of an atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So I don't say that means Peter can't do it. By the way, I guess in that sense, Peter's like Dardoch and TSM. He's doing something maybe he hasn't been able to do before, and he's either going to sink or fucking swim. That's the good news, right? I doubt he's going to stick around if he does really badly. So if he makes it, great, he made it. But I think it's a gamble.
Yeah. And I guess the last thing for me on the soundbite, right, is like everyone's going to sit there and like point at this, but like prove us wrong. Like, this is why I always say it. Like, can you be a young coach? Yes, there are good young coaches out there. Like, I think that there are plenty of young coaches within esports, but I don't think that it's a rule. So like, I think like, get off your high horse. Like, this is what my experience is. If you have a divided player group in the past and you're young, that sounds like a clique to me. And from my experience, that doesn't work out. So you know what? I fucking ran a team for 3 years now. Like, take it as you will.
Right.
Yeah.
Duncan.
Oh yeah, by the way, we should do the other moves in the team though.
Well, yeah, let's finish up on TSM and then end the show once again. Like, we didn't get to cover all the teams, but we talked a lot.
Alright.
We
Still a
covered
couple
a lot
more.
of
We'll
stuff.
just do the next person.
Well, they have Broken Blade Sting and Kabe and Biofrost coming from Kabe from Europe, from Splice, and Biofrost from CLG. I actually love the Biofrost move. I cannot believe TSM managed this. I think Biofrost is better than Smoothie in a lot of ways, and TSM worked with both Biofrost and Smoothie, and they're choosing Biofrost over Smoothie, where CLG has never worked with Smoothie, and they're like, okay, so TSM wants to give us Smoothie, and they want to take Biofrost from us. Like, we're down for this. Like, I don't know how TSM made this happen.
This is a classic Listen Loco moment where we both think the exact opposite. What I think here is, fucking hell, CLG traded fucking Biofrost for Smooth. How did they do that? Because here's the problem. You've done your classic move, which is once the player has not that great a split, they're written off and they're never going to get back to the top level again, unless they're like your mate. And the one who's had a good split, he's going to be good. So here's the problem is, when I look at TSM, I don't go, Smoothie, fuck that up. He was one of the players I give the least blame to in that team. I thought he was actually one of the, overall, he wasn't the best player at any point in time, but he was one of the ones who didn't look like a problem. He had Sven, who I think was a nightmare that fucking year. Obviously, his jungle scenario was absolutely dog shit. Broken Blade was not only fucking inting half the games, but secretly tearing the team apart like fucking The Room or some shit. And then here's my problem. In this situation, I've never gotten the Biofrost height. Oh, by the way, I'll just say this. It is also incredibly hilarious to me that you now write off a player because they were ruined by TSM. You would be loving Smoothie when he came into TSM. Yeah, guess what? When you've been in an abusive relationship, you don't look at your best when you come out the other side. You look at you're at your worst, you need to pick me up. So here's the thing. I'm not saying on week one. At the end of the split, prediction time, Thorin says, I mean, if the TSM win the split, obviously everyone will say I'm wrong. I don't give a fuck. Thorin says at the end of spring split, Smoothie will be a better support than Biofrost. And I actually think he's going to bring way more to CLG. He's going to bring shot calling elements that he's going to get to use, unlike TSM, who fucking literally like inhibit that skill somehow in any support player. Meanwhile, I don't think Biofrost brings any of that to TSM, and I actually think TSM again lacks for shot calling elements and obvious direction. So to me, Biofrost, I've never thought he was a bad player. I think he's always been an above average support. I don't think he's ever been the best support. I don't give a fuck if he played Ricard and sat like going, wow, double, if you're killing everyone, mate. Like, that isn't the shit as support to me. I think Smoothie's always been a very good support. I don't think he was overrated most of his career. I think he's just, unfortunately, he's a person who, he's like the Freeze of support. He's just made the wrong choice in every fucking chance he had. And he's always zigged so that when he left, that was when a team got better or in a way that like fucked him. So he never really got the results he deserved as a player. I still think he is a very good player.
Any take on this spawn before I make my point?
No, not really. I'm interested to see how it goes because I'm a big fan of Kobe, but that's the opposite side of it. Like, I'll watch this one as a fan because I love watching TSM either win or lose. It's good. Yeah,
of course. Good drama, right?
I think there are reasons for TSM to value Biofrost over Smoothie. Like, Smoothie has shot calling. Smoothie is a bigger shot caller than Biofrost. Smoothie is more of a leadership figure, but maybe TSM didn't need that. Maybe Smoothie's leadership clashed with Bjergsen. Maybe they want to give Dardoch more of a voice and they want a quieter support. So I can see Biofrost fitting in there.
Okay.
But what's your point regarding, like, TSM worked with both Smoothie and Biofrost, and they're saying, we want Biofrost. We think Biofrost is better.
Guess what? Crazy idea here. I don't think TSM know what the fuck they're doing with half their players. They also thought, let Doublelift go. You like that move still, do you, cocksucker? Do you like that move?
I was one of the few people that said that was a dangerous move. I said, what is it, giving up Doublelift to another North American team?
That's not the point. The point isn't what you think. You've missed the point again. You were making a point about how TSM sees it. Right, Spawn, I'm going to have to go to your independent judge.
I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean.
Did Loco make a premise that was like, TSM must know what they're doing because they chose this player? And then I made a point of a player they chose not to take. And he goes, but I said it fucking, get me out, please.
I understand what you mean, Duncan.
I need to leave the Matrix, please.
I understand what you mean, Duncan, that TSM, even though they have the information, they could still make the wrong choice. I get it.
Okay, we brought you back. Okay, we brought you back. Good. The problem is there, sometimes I feel like when I help you, it's like how they say you should never save a drowning man because he might drag you under. That's like, sometimes when I reach out to you, I feel like I get that sinking feeling. Look, but I'm back now. I'm back. Okay, I'm back. Right. Anyway, so I get your angle. Right, you're believing in TSM again. Fucking hell. It's like Scientology being in TSM, isn't it? I think not only if you leave do you still secretly low-key believe it, but they probably destroy your reputation publicly, legally, even if you say anything. So you're just in the cult forever at this point. I've accepted that, you know. I don't know what's going to happen at this point. I'll see if I can ever break you out, but I think you've probably damaged goods at this point, baby. So, right, the question is this. Now add in the other move. Let's do the roster move for AD carry, right? Because that ties into the support angle, obviously. Now, again, Smoothie's going over the sticks here, and now Kobe is what Biofrost gets. Now, listen, I think Kobe is a better player than Stixie. I think Stixie is a very average AD carry. I never thought he was bad. He's just an average AD carry. I think... I think Spawn just said he's a big fan of Kobe, though, so he should say his opinion first. What do you think of Kobe coming over from Splice to TSM?
I kind of think of Kobe, how you were describing other players. Like, he is a player that will only win you games and he never loses you games, right? Okay. And I think that if you have someone like Broken Blade on the top side of your map running around like a maniac in half the games you are, you need a player like Kobe. It's like, it's not even I want someone at that point. It's like,
it's a stabilizing force.
Yeah, I need, like, as I said, I would have used the King example. Like, if you put like FBI in this team, even though I think FBI is better than King, this team does not functionally work. Right. Whereas if you take one of those players that is happy to just accumulate farm, happy to just, know his role on the team and happy to team fight, like, fuck, I think Broken Blade needs that on a team, man. And I think that, that will fit TSM's MO of get a system in place, play around Bjergsen, have a good late gaming damage threat, play the game like Dota, don't play it like League of Legends.
Their team's like very similar to their Spring Split roster, like Broken Blade, Bjergsen staying the same, Kobe and Zeben kind of the same, Smoothie and Biofrost kind of the same, Acadian and Dardoch also kind of the same. So it's
Jungler just literally fucks his teammates. Oh, sorry, did I say that out loud?
I used to think that Sven was a little bit more would play the utility role, like was a much more like Ezreal player and stuff like that. I think like Kobe is like a hyper carry player, like in my opinion, like insane Zyre and stuff like that. So I think like there is a nuanced difference between Kobe and Sven in my opinion, even when they like went to Worlds together, like in all those years ago on Origin and Splice or whoever Kobe was on. Like I always thought of Kobe as like a really good hyper carry player.
Here's the problem. I agree with your characterization. It's actually why I used to get fucking roasted for it at the time. I personally never put Sven on the level of the Forgivens of the world. I never thought he was that type of player because, first of all, again, he also had, so as I'm fucking expecting, super sick players around him and loads of veterans. And then in his lane, he had Mithy. Now, if you think it's a coincidence that this guy, and by the way, Mithy in his whole career just picked out great AD carries and helped work them into being top players. If you think it's a coincidence that while playing with Mithy, he was a monster on like Jhin, Ezreal. Like, these aren't champions, Loco, where you smash the lane and then carry the whole fucking team fight. What these champions are best at is like, you have agency over the map. You can move around. If your support's a genius like Mithy, that's the perfect champion. Yeah. His problem when he was on TSM was, like, he never had great synergy with Smoothie, seemingly, and he never was able to get that style to work. Like, one of the things people used to blame Sven for, said this theory in the past, is he used to int randomly, right? He'd sometimes even be on the map, not just that famous int, but I've seen him do it before. Just make a movement towards mid and just get killed along the way. And you're like, what the fuck's the AD carry doing? That's what you would do when you play with a genius who tells you to do that map movement. And you're trying to do it without him, basically. So I actually don't even think it means he's a bad player. It's just he needs to be on a different type of team.
Yeah, I think like this is a prey to Teddy situation. Whereas like I would think of like, Sven as like a prey, and I think of Kobe as like a Teddy. And does that mean their champion pools don't overlap? No, like they're fucking professional players. They play everything in the game, but that's just their role on the team, in my opinion.
Now, here's the part where I comment and flame. Because the problem is, to me, Kobe is just what they thought they were getting with Sven, except they didn't because they're idiots. And also we talked about how TSM internally doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. I know they thought they were getting the new double lift when they got Sven. What they actually thought they were getting, or should have known they were getting, was what Kobe got, which is one of the top EU AD carries. But the whole point of his game is, like Prey, never lose lane, be safe in lane, don't be a liability at that point in the game. But when you get to the point where an AD carry can take over and you have your champion and you've scaled it up, then you go and you motherfucking carry. I think Kobe was literally the number one reason why Splice played those ridiculous scaling comps to late game, because that's how you unlock his ability. So I saw he himself made some comment somewhere that he was the best player on all of the teams he's played on or whatever. You weren't. Here's the thing, Kobe. You were the best player 25 minutes in. I would have personally said like Humanoid was better than him as a raw player. Maybe someone like Vizicachi at one point in his career was better. Like, but I get the reason why he would see it that way, because if he gets to that point in the game, it's like, right, now's my time to fucking go to work. Now is when I do my business. So the question is, can they get to that point? So I actually think this team again is going to put pressure on Broken Blade. Like, Bjergsen, I'm going to assume is going to be a good player still, but I feel like Broken Blade has to hold up because that's what's going to allow Kobe to get online. this is not a Forgiven who's going to smash the lane. Like, that's not going to happen. Also, it's not really the AD carry style in the modern day. Like, let's be real.
I think his laning is a little bit better than what people give him credit for. North Garen was an enter. Like, North Garen was one of the worst laners like we've ever seen.
Yes.
So he had training waste, so maybe he's not going to be a Forgiven type dominant laner, but he's going to be better than what we saw him in Europe. And the competition here is worse than what
He's also an
in
LCS.
Europe.
Yeah, sure. She should be able to bump up.
Yeah. And then, okay, so regarding their top side, right? I think the whole thing about TSM, if it works or not, is Dardoch Broken Blade. These players have incredibly high highs, but also incredibly low lows. Broken Blade in the finals, like people always remember like Zeben Inting. Broken Blade was the reason why TSM was so dominant in that finals. Of course, other people did well. Of course, Bjerg and Acadian played well. But Broken Blade was playing better than Impact most of the games. Like, he was so good in Spring, and he disappeared in Summer. Zven did the ints. That's why we all forget about him. But he has the potential to be one of the best carry tops in North America. So we can see that out of him again. And also, we know how good Dardoch can be. But we also know...
Is he a two-way player? Like, because the problem I have is, like, you just described, like, once again, one of those players that if you take me back to Europe last time we played the game, sure, give me it. The Riven versus Fiora matchups and stuff like that. But do you need a carry top laner in today's game? Like,
That's the thing, though, right? Like, Season 10, we don't know what it's going to look like. And Season 10, it looks like it's going to favor teams like TL, where you have the strong boss side. You just keep stacking dragons over and over again.
Essentially, he's asking you, if Broken Blade's a weak side player, what then?
Not good for TSM. And I don't think he's a weak side player. I don't think Broken Blade shines when he doesn't get a lot of resource.
Because the thing that I look at, right, is like, I think that Impact can be a strong side player. Like, we actually saw this guy go toe-to-toe. He picked up things like Aatrox and stuff like that. I think that people look at the way Team Liquid like to operate, and if the meta is a 50-50 meta, you would play towards Doublelift before you would play towards Impact. That's just a smart thing to do. But when the meta dictates that you have to be able to play carry tops, Impact has shown enough over the last couple of years that I would believe that he is able to go towards that. You know, he played Kennen, he played Nico, he played Aatrox. So I would say he's a little bit more of a two-way player than what maybe the public perception of Impact is. And I think Doublelift is as well. He's much more of a two-way player than anyone gives him credit for. That's why he's the greatest AD carry from North America.
This Yuri kind of chilled off the time.
Yeah, and then, so that's what I'm saying is, like, I agree with you. We don't know what it looks like. From my understanding, the way Riot have described the game, they like the pressure on the bottom side of the map. They like the fact that you have to play around your hard carry. They like the 30 to 35 minute window. They're not going to bring it earlier. They're not going to take it later. So in my opinion, that, like, you need to be a two-way top laner, because you might get the rare patch where you get to play things like, you know, Riven and stuff like that. But I think you're going to get a lot of patches where you're playing Scion, Ornn, or a mage utility. And that's why when people say, I can see it already in Twitch chat, so I'm going to get ahead of it. What about the Shy? The Shy had the best Scion in the world when he won the World Championship. He sucked when he couldn't be the two-way player.
Also, people don't seem to get this. This is something people don't. I'm probably going to do some content on the Shy soon, because one of the most underrated things about the Shy is that IG didn't play as though he was Naguri in Damwon Gaming. IG used to literally go, the Shy got a kill on his own in a bad matchup, just let him keep doing that. We'll play for the rest of the map. It's like that's mad. Is this guy was like a weak side player as the best top laner in the world with a fucking carry champion. He was so insane. He was playing like that. Like, and also at this point in time, I'm going to make a new rule for the show. Invoking the Shy is like invoking Faker for anyone else. Like, well, of course, if you're 17, you should win. Or, you know, well, why don't you just win everything in your first split? Like, that's like using Faker outlier to logic. It has to be the same with the Shy. The Shy is a mutant who basically shouldn't exist in the normal world of League of Legends. Like, you wouldn't get a player like that just come normally out of a random team. He's just a force of nature, and he's like some fucking god that just descended from the heavens. Anyway, let's move to the bottom side of the map, because now we have to do the discussion of making this bot lane work. Kobe and fucking Biofrost. Oh, actually, saying North Scaring. That reminds me, I didn't give my opinion. I sat there and just let you say what you say, Loco, because I'm a bit of a...
You think North Scaring's good?
I think North Scaring and Kobe were incredibly poorly paired players, because as far as I know, I think they picked up North Scaring like right towards the end of the offseason or something. He was just like, they were just looking for talent, and he was talent at the time. What I think is, actually, North Scaring would have been better suited with someone who wants to play up in the lane, Upset or someone like that. I think that's the kind of player I want to see North Scaring with. I actually think, to some degree, part of what made both him and Kobe look shit in lane is that Kobe's this really reserved player who's even willing to take a loss in the lane. And then I think North Scaring's the guy who's wanting to make plays and wants to go out there and actually is doing shit to even keep fucking Kobe alive. Like, at times he's propping him up, even if that means dying. And the big problem is this. In Europe, I think if you ask veterans, etc., I don't think they would flame North Scaring that hard. They wouldn't say he's anywhere close to the best support. But here's the problem. Yes, at Worlds, that looked fucking terrible. North Scaring was inting the fuck up at Worlds. I agree. There, I think he really, really dropped the ball and was probably the main reason that team was shit. But I think overall, I think people have been, unfortunately, I think to make the hype that Kobe was held back, people have to shit on North Scaring. And this isn't, in my opinion, like if when Doublelift had a bad support. This is like a scenario where it's more like they weren't stylistically a match for me. Like they should have been on different teams.
Well,
I could be wrong on that. Don't claim to know everything.
We'll get to see. We'll get to see. Young Buck believes in North Scaring, so maybe there's some truth there. But I think Kabe Bio...
Speaking of which, by the way, you know what? I'll go ahead and say it. I told TSM to recruit Young Buck. I told them the reasons to recruit Young Buck. I told them he might even be available because guess what? I'd been hearing the whole year. Fucking fans who don't know what's going on. You idiots listening to stuff on stream. I knew the whole year it was a nightmare team. Like, again, I said this on a different show. That is literally the team where in 3 years you should get the coach and the players and do a documentary about that year. Because the idea they almost won the split in summer against the best team ever and then went top 8 at Worlds, beating out RNG and won a game off SKT and only lost to the eventual champions. Youngbuck is a fucking best coach in the history of League of Legends as far as my experience tells me. Of the things that I know, nobody can fuck with this guy. And you know what's great? Spawn's going to love this. None of it's X's and O's. He took the stuff that was smart from the analyst and implemented it. All the rest of it was like managing egos, figuring out band-aid fixes for two players that should be broken, getting players that can't stand each other, but putting them into roles where they don't make those The guy's a fucking genius. It's unbelievable. Like what he did to that team was like some fucking Gordon Ramsay's The Kitchen Nightmares where you go to some shithole diner where there's like a fucking fat fire's about to start and then you make it into like a pretty sick place. But what do you do when you do that? The first thing you do is you take stuff away. You fire the guy that's rubbish. You get the menu and you put it down from 50 things with pizzas and chicken tikkas and you make it like 5 things that we're going to be good at.
Really
that's literally what he did. And if people ever find out, what's amazing is, like, we can't go into it now. It's all secret information. But some of the, like, things he implemented sound like they're genius. Like, he came up with ideas and approaches to problems I've never seen. So I've never seen anyone take a team that was broken and literally hold it together and go to that level. Like, it's inconceivable in League of Legends history. I've never seen anything like it personally. So I think personally, there's another area TSM dropped the ball. Make a fucking offer to that guy, especially when you've had problems with your jungler and big egos. The guy's tailor-made for it. And the sad thing is, as far as I know, he did not get these offers from these big teams. Otherwise, he probably would have gone.
One thing that chat brought up in their show I thought was hilarious. What's the over and under on Dardoch playing? How many games Dardoch plays? Does he play?
That's not a bad one. The problem is, who's the academy jungler? Spicker again.
Yeah, Spicker.
I mean, in theory, Peter Zhang's going to like Spicker, so I assume he'd actually consider it. So that actually makes it even more likely. Normally, you just don't want to go with the academy players. So I'd probably say if he really blows it up and goes full old Dardoch and hasn't worked on any of the current issues, let's see. So there's 18 games. Mm-hmm. This guy can fucking move, baby. This could be like week 3. You have to remember that stat I told you in the article.
You think six?
Dude, CLG had been number 1 in LCS in like the summer of 2017 for 5 of the 6 weeks, and they were still in number 2 with 4 games lost out of 14 played. And they said, "Get this guy the fuck out of this team now. We'd rather lose and play with Omar God, who we definitely don't think's better, than ever see this motherfucker in a chain of CLG jersey." What do you think you have to do to make a team do that, Loco? That's like, I'll give you. Should I go this far? I'll give you a tiny story from my youth, and I'll make it really vague so that none of y'all motherfuckers can track shit down. All I'll say is this. When I was a little kid, sometimes, you know what? This will blow your mind. I used to be a bit rambunctious. Well, I'm using words even Loco doesn't know, just to make sure you can't tell what I'm talking about. I was a little bit rambunctious. I had a lot of spunk. And what you used to do was, used to talk a lot in class. Can you believe that? Used to talk a lot of shit in class. Can you believe that? And guess what? Teachers do not tolerate. Teachers do not tolerate talking in general, right? The idea you're talking and you're chatting shit as well. So what they used to do as a tactic is sometimes they'd try and fuck with me one week if they want to be quiet, like put me next to someone else. And so they thought, silly, that the challenge is like, well, if he's next to someone he can't even talk to, what's he going to say? No, I'd make like the fucking quietest girl trying to just do her homework, like be losing her shit at the end of the week, like, get this motherfucker with me. Not literally, but like the gist almost. Like I just brought that out of them. So listen, Dardoch can fucking move, baby. He can move hearts and minds and not always in the right way. So if it goes badly, it's week 3. There you go.
6 games? That? Oh, God.
I like them apples. If it goes well, by the way, he's never going to leave. He's going to be one of the best junglers they ever had.
I do think that's the thing about this TSM team, though. If everything clicks, they'll be amazing. Like Peter, he'll be a fine coach. When there aren't problems, when they aren't losing that much, like it'll work out. Like there's no problems when you're winning. When they start losing, that's where the big problems are gonna come.
Right, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do that part of the show where I literally hand you a noose. You hang yourself and make a complete fool out of yourself because I'm a bad friend, but I know what great entertainment is. So here we go. We don't know all the rosters yet, Loco. We're not going to do all of them on this show, but we talked about 100T's, these other ones. Go on then. Where is TSM going to be? Where is this lineup going to be in this league, Loco? Give me your prediction, please.
I know all the risks involved. I know it's going to be.
You're going to say, are you ready? He's going to say second place. Are you ready, Spawn? I guarantee it. He's about to say second after Team Liquid. He's only going to credit Team Liquid because he's finally realised maybe they're really fucking good. So come on, Loco. Say they're the second place team like we all know you want to do. Probably with a chance to win, right? Probably a chance to win LCS. Yeah, go on.
How long have we been doing this show? 96 episodes? Holy fuck. That's exactly what I'm going to say. They are going to be second. The only team they'll lose out to is TL. Oh my god, you know me.
Loco, sadly I can't do it right now because actually, to be fair to both of us, I should wait till all the rosters are confirmed.
Yeah.
But once the rosters are confirmed, I'm going to keep doing this to you. You're going to be doing another Lord bet with me. We're going to be doing a bet. But we'll do it for who's second this time. We won't say first. We'll take Team Liquid out. That's unfair.
Okay.
I was basically exploiting your naivety by letting you let me bet that Team Liquid would win the fucking split and that TSM wouldn't win the split with the sub jungle. So I actually was a bad person in that one because, again, I wanted to win that time. So this time around, we'll make it fair. What we'll do on the next show that we do when all the rosters are announced is we'll bet who's going to come second and then we'll make that the bet.
Okay. All right. Spawn, any final words? Anything you want to touch on?
Nah, this has been fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. Spawn, where can people find you? Where can people find Order?
Order is at order_army. We have a League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and Overwatch team at the moment. So if you're a fan of any games, come check us out. We also recently signed a deal with Puma, so we got some sick merch as well coming on the way. And then obviously I'm Spawn Lol on Twitter. I've been around for a while, so hopefully you know where to find me.
If they want to find order, don't look in your fucking room. That represents chaos. You're like the fucking Zoroastrian religion.
I'll clean it. Okay. On Friday, one of my friends coming over and she's going to help clean. Okay. After Friday, the room will be clean.
Of course, Loco makes a woman clean his fucking apartment. Those Korean values fucking die out hard, don't they, baby?
Oh my god. One of my friends offered and I said yes. Well, what's the problem?
That's the price of the friend zone, right? Keep going. End the show.
All right. Bye, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you to our gold Patreon supporters, Butt Pounder 420, Tobias Bernasconi, Icelandic C9 fan, and thank you to all our Twitch subs, thank you to all the YouTube viewers, thank you to everyone that makes this show possible. I genuinely love doing Listen Loco, and yeah, thank you so much for making this possible.